Continuity in comics, everybody's favorite subject. Hear this. Marvel's continuity goes back to, well, the beginning of Marvel Comics. That means that to find the beginning of the origin of Spider-Man and X-Men and everybody else, you have to go all the way back to the 60s to see their start. And for DC, it's a pretty similar affair. Now, that's a lot to ask from a potential reader. Oh, you want to start with Spider-Man? Go all the way back to 1965 or whatever it is. It's a lot to ask. And on top of that, things can get pretty wild. You know, when you talk about, well, what version of Superman are we dealing with? Is it the one from pre-crisis? Is it the one from New 52? Is it a fusion? What is it? The answer, the legitimate real life answer is something I don't even know. So that goes to show you how complicated this can be sometimes. And I've seen more and more every decade the idea that continuity is something that the comics should move away from. But I don't think anyone can argue that there aren't at least some advantages to sticking to the established continuity. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at continuity from a pros and cons standpoint and establish, what are the gifts and curses of continuity, and is it something that the big two should stick to? On the very last day, this is the last day, right? No. Yes, this is the last day of November.
Yes.
We've got Marco.
What's up, continuity dogs?
Tyler.
Greetings, nerds.
Of course, I'm Sean. Thank you for being here. Whether you are live or in the future, make sure that you smash that like button.
Smash.
As we get into things here. You know, I think about continuity, and I see a lot of people, talk about it and say how we need to move away from it, and they like less continuity in their comics. And I wonder how they feel about the continuity of real life. Like, there are aspects of my continuity that, I'd rather weren't a part of my headcanon. I'd rather have a crisis event to be able to get rid of, but I can't do that. I kind of have to live with my life, the continuity of my life. So sometimes I wonder how those people deal with life.
That reminded me of what you just said, Ronnie, of those future memes where it's like, oh, thinking about continuity in comics made me think about the continuity of where our relationship went wrong, and it's him texting.
I like that phrasing though. That's a good way to think about it, and you can think of your life as a series of nexus, a series of events, literally, right, outside of your day-to-day issues. But the continuity exists differently, I feel like.
Huh.
Go on.
Yeah, go on, Mark. I want to see where you're going with this one.
Well, you can't retcon life. You can retcon comics.
I got a bat that can fix that for you.
Maybe therapy can help fix that. Therapy helps. Actually, therapy helps to retcon the things that we don't want to apply to headcanon.
This is why Heroes in Crisis was the correct crisis event.
Therapy was the answer all along.
I mean, well, we just established Wolverine has PTSD, so I think the answer is a definitive yes, Marco.
For the first time ever, huh?
Right.
Man, Rogue was in therapy to get rid of her accent, too. It's weird. So I always look on Fridays, I look for what Sean's topic of the show will be, because sometimes we don't know, Sean doesn't know it till day of or whatever. And I want to get the thumbnails up there as soon as I can. And when I saw Sean post this one, I'm like, oh, of course it matters. Duh. I'm like, oh, we got 20 minutes on this one? But then as I'm editing the thumbnail and as I'm trying to figure out how do I make, properly represent this, my mind keeps changing on it. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, the comics that I care about, the stories that I care about, sorry, let me be specific, the stories that really resonate with me are kind of continuity light. And those are the ones that are easier to recommend to people. So I don't know if this matters as much as my gut reaction told me.
Well, What are some of those stories?
New Frontier. New Frontier is what I go to for DC immediately. Even Kingdom Come is a decent one, although it helps to have a little more knowledge of what DC is.
But I think that story exists outside of the continuity, but the characters are all based upon something that exists in mainline continuity. Like there is a Wonder Woman, right? And that Wonder Woman exists. A version of that Wonder Woman exists in the comics going backwards, and so it's pulling that. It's deciding to leverage that history in a specific way to tell a specific story that exists outside of the your typical mainline stuff.
So you're saying it can't exist without having continuity. Those
I
continuity
think
light ones cannot exist without the continuity being established.
I think certain things can exist without continuity, but I think they're few and far between because they all go back to some sort of, unless you're rewriting an origin, and even then, the reason you're rewriting it and the reason it's designated a rewrite is because there is another origin. But I guess you have to then consider, how do you separate that from your reading, right? Like you can read New Frontier and that could be the foundation of your comics reading. But if you've read something before, you have to make that comparison to something prior or other, I guess.
I mean, I think that's a big way I come down on it too, is like for the continuity haters, how do you get around the fact that the books that you like don't exist without the thing that you say is a problem? Like Kingdom Come is one of my favorite comics of all time, but if you don't know Batman and Superman's relationship, if you don't know Lex and Superman, like you have to know things in order for that to work. And if you don't, then it's a little odd. It's not, I don't think that these stories are even built to be read by people, especially going back to the ones like Kingdom Come. I don't think Kingdom Come was written to be accessible the way we think about
Mm.
accessibility in comics in 2024. So it's not a good entry point for a new reader. It's continuity light, quote unquote, in the sense that it's not tethered to the most immediate thing that happened in mainline, but it absolutely assumes who all these people are that you're seeing and that you were connected to comics at that time.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a good constraint on the definition because then it becomes too unwieldy to say, well, or rather, you can then say, everything is continuity free.
How did you arrive there?
Well, because
Nice way of putting it, Sean.
because then you can say Ultimate Spider-Man, like the OG Ultimate Spider-Man, uh, is continuity free because it created its own continuity, but that's
Mm.
not true because technically its creation uh, presupposes you know something about Spider-Man if you're a reader. For Ultimate Peter Parker, that itself is uh, that's the first time that he ever existed. He has his own history, all that kind of stuff. That's separate um, from being distinct from mainline, if that made sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I think in the case of something like that, Ultimate Spider-Man can absolutely be somebody's, first Spider-Man comic, and I don't think it requires you to have any prior knowledge. Bendis and Bagley and everybody do a great job with that. But at the same time, that isn't the first appearance of Spider-Man of all time. It is a tremendous jumping on point. You don't have to know anything about it, but how many opportunities are there like that to do an Ultimate Spider-Man and not experience diminishing returns? And also, at what point does it become, oh, this is now has its own continuity? It's not as far back as 1960, but it's still continuity.
It's funny when Ultimate Spider-Man was coming out, and I'd never read it, the original Ultimate Spider-Man line. I didn't read it until there was that soft relaunch where they had like holographic covers. Maybe a year or two before Miles came around. That's when I jumped in, And the reason why I didn't read it was because there was so much that um, anxiety, that reading anxiety, came about for me for Ultimate Spider-Man because it was so recent, and because I could see the end, and I can see that 100+ issues where that seemed attainable, but because of that, it was daunting. Meanwhile, if I try to go to, oh, I'm not going to read from the 60s. That's a dumb idea. That doesn't even like register as an option in my head. Marco's built different, apparently,
That's what I did,
but
dude. I was like, hey, I want to read Spider-Man. Let's go to 62.
see, I never like as a reader though, I never understood that.
Really?
Yeah, just because like people write differently in 62. Like,
Oh, a
maybe
thousand
this,
percent.
maybe it helps because I had my dad's comics growing up, but those were tricky to read sometimes because they were so wordy. Uh,
You have to switch the mindset be in there. Because otherwise they become it can become tedious. Like you have to kind of just like mentally be locked in for that.
no, I would just find the issues that Emma Frost was in my dad's X-Men books and just gawk at those for a bit. But
Ah,
the reading didn't really come there. But also I think I started comics like before I could really read them fully. Like I would look through them.
Sure.
So I think my relationship might have been different with how I was introduced to it.
I had the same inclination as Marco to go back and want to read, Spider-Man from the beginning. I've read pretty much every Spider-Man comic until the 90s. I think that's when I stopped trying to do that. Um
Wow.
yeah, I had these discs that I was given for Christmas one year that had every single Spider-Man comic into the 2000s on disc, and I had nothing better to do, so over the years I just read them all. But I didn't do that in my lead up to mainline. I did it because I felt like doing it. And then whenever I started reading mainline, I was doing that as well. So it wasn't like, oh my God, I have to start at the beginning. But I think what Tyler said makes perfect sense. If it's 2009 and Ultimate Spider-Man just started in the year 2000, you're like, I could go back and read that. I could do that. I'm not, but I can.
And I did it with Walking Dead. Walking Dead, I might have started reading it back when it was like in the issue 80s, discussion of like, oh, this book's going to hit 100. He started around there. So I went back and I read it all. And you know what? Time suck. I was in college. That was a fucking time suck. So I realized my limitations, I guess. I loved it, but that was really all I was reading at the time.
And with Ultimate, like we live in an era where and Walking Dead is a good example too. We live in an era where you don't have to worry about going and finding the back issues or being like, "Oh my God, it's impossible for me to catch up." This is a very recent problem in comics. If you think about the span of superhero comics going all the way back to Batman and Superman Action Comics #1, then think about the very limited period relative to that in which we've even had back issues. We've only
Mm.
had back issues as a real thing since the 70s when we started to get comic shops, and it was limited even then. Part of the reason comic shops even exist is because of back issues, but you're still only talking about 30 years ago. And then the proliferation of it as a big thing, as an accessible thing, that's really the 90s. And trades as well. You don't start seeing real trade collections until the 90s and 2000s.
Well, Sean, that's actually the 50 years ago and 30 years ago.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That the idea of comics as a medium was a disposable thing back then. It was meant to
Yeah.
be read and tossed. That's why like soap operas, it would kind of retell a lot of stuff constantly and reset the stage to like Superman stories. Like it would kind of lay the land of who Superman is a lot back then, um, because you were meant to kind of just pick it up and just read it.
Yeah, I mean the stories were the stories were set in a way that you could kind of jump into one and then continue from that point. There wasn't a need to go back because realistically, there wasn't there wasn't a sequential story happening. Like maybe you had a two-parter, maybe, right? But otherwise, it was monster of the week, villain of the week, whatever was happening in that issue was contained in that issue. because yeah, you're right. The expectation was, oh, I'm gonna pick this up, and then I'm gonna junk it somewhere because I'm not here uh for the value of the collecting and maybe that's where the fact that we have comic collectors started to come in is that they felt that there was value in going backwards and having this long history because probably at some point there was a narrative shift to include, oh, well, this happened last issue, hey, there's a reference to something that happened in issue whatever. Your illustrious editor had decided that they want to be able to pull from something a few years back, or this writer now wanted to tackle an issue that was actually discussed in issue, Su- uh Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, number 42 or something like that.
And the thing is, right? Like I feel like a history lesson is necessary to talk about this because what you're saying is absolutely true, and also the reason why we have back issues is because of older comic book fans. And when I say older, we're going all the way back to the 70s. I'm talking about college age people who grew up a little bit, who were readers, maybe even in the 60s, grew up a little bit, still love comics and wanted more. But when you're in your 20s, you don't necessarily want the, oh my goodness, Batman and Robin are on an alien planet and they have to fight the rainbow monster. You don't necessarily want that. You want something that has tethers to things that you've been reading. You want a narrative. And that's how the comic book industry started to shift and change. Because now these people, not only did they want to read stories that were a little more serious, but they wanted to have access to all the stories featuring Batman, not just the one that was out that week.
Yeah. Uh,
So that's a huge factor. Now, to me, ultimately, when it came time to start reading mainline comics, when I got into the industry, I jumped right in. I didn't wait around for trades and wait around for all that. I'm in. Let's get it done. And that wasn't a problem. So I always come down on that issue like, wait, just read a comic if you want to.
In a modern sense, I wonder if manga has influence here. Um, because anytime someone's like, "Yo, you got to check out One Piece," I'm like, "All right, can I just pick up the? Can I just read it on Shonen?" No, I got to start at the beginning. I'm like, oh, 600? I'm okay. I'm good. And I wonder if that mentality is.
600, you wish.
I know. I wonder if that mentality is seeping into the idea of where to pick up comics and continuity in comics.
I don't know that it is because I think I think the manga reader is trained to pick up at number one volume. Like they're trained to pick up a volume one. Where I think, to Sean's point, a comic book reader is trained to pick up an issue, uh, and you can jump in there, or like there's even jumping on points that get advertised. I I hesitate from that just because I and actually maybe to your point, Tyler, I hesitate because I like to see where the things began. Where did this like if you name drop a relationship to me, somebody pops in for like if you get a cameo in an issue, I'm like, hey, who's that guy? Oh, they met in issue 93, and I have issue in my hand like 200. I'm like, ah, shit. Well, gotta go to 93.
When I used to read Naruto, I started at the beginning too. Like
Yeah,
that only seemed like the right option for me, and I'm just I can't quite pinpoint why that's different for me in main comics. Mainly because the only thing I can think of is that it's just way too much. It seems impossible. So just screw it and start where you can.
but you're comfortable picking up an issue like you'd be comfortable picking up Teen Titans 14.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, like I would never start a manga for example. Well, I would never start a manga. I would
Period.
never start
End of discussion. Yeah.
like The Walking Dead, for example, like Tyler mentioned. I would never do what Tyler did because that is a singular story where every link in the chain matters. Yes, Spider-Man's continuity extends all the way back to 1960, whatever, but not every link in the chain matters to the specific book that's on the stands that week when you go to the shop.
Do you think that knowledge is not there for most new readers? How do you express that? That like, okay, all this exists and it happened, but it doesn't matter.
I think that that is something that is hard to understand for people because there isn't a lot of storytelling like comics elsewhere. If you like, I've brought it up multiple times. I love like soap operas or wrestling. If those kinds of things, stories that extend, basically into in perpetuity until they get canceled and see, people recast as the same person in the case of soap operas and just long form storytelling. If you're used to that, then comics is not going to be weird to you. You're not going to go back to the first episode of Monday Night Raw from 1992 or whatever to watch what's happening now. You're not going to go back to the first episode of Days of Our Lives to watch the current stuff. You won't need to. But in most people's minds, if you're going to watch Breaking Bad, you're going to start with the first episode. But it's different. There's only going to be, let's say, for example, conservatively 50 issues or 50 episodes of Breaking Bad. There might be 50 issues in one person's run of Amazing.
Thinking back on the manga side of it, I'm not as familiar with the comparison for wrestling, but anytime that I'm told to start at the beginning for manga, it's because people want you to hit the emotional highs. There is a in issue, let's say 60 of One Piece, there's going to be an emotional moment. There's going to be a peak that only happens because you started in number one. But that peak at 60 also ties into a peak that happens in 240, and that peak in 240 also ties into an emotional peak that happened in issue 97, but gets paid off only in issue 600 and something. I think because there isn't that singular continuity, there is the changing of hands, that maybe there's the emotional resonance happens less frequently. Not that it doesn't, but the things that tie it together happen less frequently across other people's runs, because they have to change hands. They have to change, table setting. You have to change the directive for a book depending on who's writing it and who's drawing it.
It's funny as you're describing this. I'm like, oh, Grant Morrison did that fine with their run of Batman. And I'm like, oh, that's when I started Batman. Maybe I'm spoiled. I don't know.
And you know what? That's a good point, because that was my first time with Batman too, and it's like, wow, they were able to take all of this and essentially condense it to make it work and make sense.
And I didn't realize they were doing that either. I was still new
Right.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think you can look at something like Al Ewing on Immortal Hulk. You can even look at Al Ewing on Immortal Thor to a certain degree, and you can see Al playing with similar ideas and having a lot of success as well. So it's clearly possible, but I would also make the argument that those two writers in particular, their skill set probably lends them to being able to do that better than the average writer coming on board. And I'd rather not
Mm.
see it attempted by people who aren't as capable.
Whoa, McKay. Whoa, hey, who said that?
I disagree. It's Moon Knight.
I didn't say that.
Well, It was
I
a, it was
agree
a,
with you.
it was pedestrian outside of his window. It said it.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
those New York streets,
Yeah. You
the
never
world
know.
outside Marco's window.
Um, it's interesting seeing the chat on this too, because it seems to be a mixed bag of responses. Like Tilo here says, as a French reader of all things comics, French or otherwise, continuity and interconnection are the reasons I read American comics. It's the it factor.
I think that Tilo is 100% right. I don't even know why. Like, we're doing this episode with this title because this is a hot button topic, but I don't even know why it is, quite frankly. There is no American comics market without continuity. That's how strongly I feel about it, and I'm willing to be that bold with my statement because I think it's accurate. And I feel that way about, like I said, wrestling. I feel that way about so anything that would require you to come back for another viewing of the same character, it doesn't require, but it benefits from a knowledge of what came before. James Bond lovers enjoy the next movie a lot more than I do because they know what happened in the one they came before.
And I'd argue it's part of what makes the medium. Because like as a writer and as an artist, part of the job is trying to square that, you know, and that goes into the art and the creation of the story. You know, all this backstory. You know, the we we did the discussion with Gavin last week about artists, and you know the Marvel Mount Rushmore and DC's Mount Rushmore, and we talked about how like a lot of things are influenced by what came before. So there's a continuity as well in the look of things, and there's calling back to certain things, and I
Well,
think that's just inherent in what the medium of big two Western comics is. That's part of what you sign up for when you take the gig.
you're looking backwards from a creative standpoint to like do homage, right? And from there even like to innovate on top, right? Like you want to be able to pull from a Jack Kirby and then put your spin on it, but then you're pulling from Jack Kirby.
There's a bit of archaeology to it. You
Yeah.
know, it was Nick Spencer during his Amazing Spider-Man run. He did what we were talking about here. He read all of Spider-Man. He read every issue of Spider-Man to prep for his run,
Hell yeah.
and that was part of his research into it. It's trying to take aspects of the character constantly as you creepily pet your. You want to give a big smooch to a nice audible smooch to your Spider-Man there. Don't do it, but like that's part of the gig, and I think that's what's charming about it in a way.
Hmm.
I want to say, hey, speaking of the audience too, what's up, Tilo, Catherine Stars, how you doing? Izzy's Issues, good to see you. Rami Darwish, my man. Moses Blackthorn, what's up? Steve Canaris, always a pleasure. Ricky B, did I say Ricky B? Ricky B.
Ricky B.
Electrics, good to see you. Joseph Wolf, how's it going? Kefis, my friend, my enemy,
Nemesis.
my nemesis. Yeah, I mean, I see people who are for continuity. I see people who are against it. I want to hear from some people who are against it. Steve Canara says, continuity necessitated the need for a multiverse, and multiverse is an insane concept. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the multiverse because both companies have it, Marvel and DC. And I think in Marvel, it's more used to tell stories that don't work in mainline, whereas in DC, it's used to explain things that don't otherwise make sense if you try to put everything together. I think that is the biggest difference between the way that both companies use the multiverse, and I think it explains a lot of where the confusion points arrive between companies. Like, for example, I'm sure there's some Marvel whiz who can tell me an example, but I can't think of a thing that doesn't make sense, but is only explained by the existence of the multiverse in Marvel. Whereas in DC, there's like different iterations of Superman that have both been in continuity at the same time. And, some aren't, some are, that kind of swapping isn't really a thing that you see happen in Marvel, which is why Miles making the jump over from Ultimate to regular was such a big deal because you generally don't see that kind of thing happening. I can think of like Nightcrawler, AOA Nightcrawler, for example, made the jump into mainline at one point. But that's pretty uncommon at Marvel Comics.
Hmm.
Whereas there are characters right now in DC that are not from that Earth. And then continuity will, or something will happen, there'll be a crisis. Now they are from that Earth. Like it's so convoluted.
Power Girl, that's a character right there.
Yep, exactly. And to me, that is a completely separate issue, right? Like that's DC's agenda to do this because they just feel like they need to do this, right? You don't need to explain all this bullshit. You really don't. It's not required. They just keep doing it.
Well, I guess it's not required to do it in like perpetuity, but how do you appease, and maybe this is the issue, is how do you appease the fan that says, hey, in issue 49 of Batman, he actually whips out the laser ray gun that whatever ray gun a guy had.
Marco, it's the bat laser ray gun.
My fault.
Yeah.
The bat laser ray gun. But now in Batman 577, this guy has it. Like, explain that, DC.
I don't like this character.
No?
DC and Marvel go about this the wrong way, different ways, and I think they're all in response to fans. I think DC is constantly it's like a tide. It's constantly overcorrecting and then undercorrecting.
Yeah.
It's all right. Let's reboot everything. Now new fans can get into it, and it's good. It's good. But now the old fans are like, but what about all these things I cared about? Okay, let's go back. Let's redo that. And now all of it matters. And the fans are like, well, there's too much continuity now. I don't know where to go. All right, let's do it again. It's this constant dance at DC. I think Marvel explicitly not doing that one time has led to where they are now, where they've never done that. It's probably what they never will do. But they will retcon stuff a lot more.
So, Brian Adkins says Bendis' Illuminati and other Marvel stuff makes zero sense if you go by continuity before it. See, that's not true. That is a retcon. It's a retcon to say that the Illuminati existed in the margins of these stories and they were meeting and hanging out. We just didn't know that. That makes perfect sense. There's nothing nonsensical about that. Just like Krakoa, what they changed with Moira McTaggart. Yes, it's a retcon. Yes, if you read those stories in a vacuum, she's clearly not a mutant, but she was. She just wasn't saying that. It's not, you don't have to break your neck to understand that, and it doesn't require the multiverse or the breaking of the concept of continuity for that to be the truth. That's not a problem.
Huh. Because like with Moira in particular, like that what you're saying makes sense to me. But I guess some people are trying to square what she was doing back then into where her character is now. And like I think of Tilda Swinton in Endgame, where she's explaining the multiversal timeline and how these branching paths, and like that's kind of how I view continuity in a way. Like these things just branch off and there's a story. That's the story, and it'll continue on, and we'll continue from there. But it doesn't. But I'm not saying there's like multiverses in the Marvel universe, but like that's how I view it. I don't think you need to fully go back to that and then explain everything that comes after it to line up to where we are at the present. I think breaking your neck is a good description of it because you're gonna get a headache from that.
But people want that. People want it to make sense now because they've read the stuff that they did prior, and maybe this new iteration is doing something slightly different with it, and that doesn't make sense to them. And like I ultimately I think the issue is that fans want an answer, and the companies decided, well, here's your answer in different ways. I think they were appeasing the comic fan when I think you're right, Sean. They could have left it as is, and it's just these are just different stories. These are just stories that these guys are telling. But then how would you recommend to the fan then to square their own circles?
I
think go ahead.
I was gonna say I think World's Finest right now is a good example. I'm not reading the Eclipso JSA Justice League story in World's Finest right now and thinking, well, how does this explain what the JSA was doing way back when? First of all, they're all the same age in this, so like I've given up already. But I think it's just reading the story. Like just dumb it down. Just keep it stupid simple. Just read the story, and if you like the story, you like the story. And eventually another story might reference that story down the line. But it doesn't change or invalidate how you felt about the story you read.
I think some things people think too much about. And some things you kind of have to I don't know. I think that there are some things people just don't understand, and when they don't understand it, they just say it's dumb, or they just say like, "Oh, this doesn't make any sense. You need to explain this to me." And it's like, "No, explain it to yourself or move on with your life." Like DC, granted, I think DC caused their own problems, but the whole reason why Crisis on Infinite Earths existed was to square away a ton of what were perceived as problems associated with continuity. But what if DC just didn't care to do that and they just kept telling stories but had a more rigid perspective on what can be done on the track of their main line like Marvel does? Then there wouldn't be this expectation on the part of DC fans and the part of DC itself to have to explain things in such a way that necessitates, these reboots, um and even just pulling from the multiverse so often that causes a lot of the confusion that we see.
The Ultimate Universe is multiversal, right? Like when you compare it to
The multiverse
616.
exists at the inception of this universe. Yes, they know it exists. We know it exists.
Hmm. Was that retcon then? Because I'm not familiar with it. Was that retcon then? Uh, or was that a retcon in that case? Like that wasn't just like, the Ultimate Universe was born at the same time as 616 necessarily.
I don't think we ever get that. That's
Hmm.
just something just like I think Hickman's Avengers and Secret Wars is a good place to look at. It's just these things exist inside multiverses.
That's
It's
right.
not
Yeah.
I'm not picturing DC's like image of all those Earths that look like a giant never-ending anal bead. Um, Marvel doesn't really do that. It's just like it's more like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Fantastic movie. It's like they just
I haven't
exist
seen it.
sideways. Um,
Oh, like you position it slightly differently, and it's
yeah, yeah. It just is
yeah,
a
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
The way I think about a retcon is like a retcon is, oh wow, actually Bucky Barnes isn't dead. He was a, soldier um who was being used for assassination missions and held in suspended animation, and no one knew that. And now he's back for vengeance against Captain America. That's a retcon. If that's not something that you can get behind, you shouldn't be reading comics. Because that, or at least mainline superhero comics, because that is a tool that the industry uses and needs to be able to inject interest into stories and tell stories to recontextualize the past. The Moira thing, for example, that's not a problem because if I ask Marco, hey, whatever, I could ask him anything, he could lie to me right now. And I might not learn the truth until a year from now. Is it a retcon when I learn the truth? Or is it just me learning the truth? You can think about it either way. In real life, yeah, we
Hmm.
know that she wasn't a mutant at that time. She wasn't written that way. But Hickman changed it. So when you read that now, when you read Moira in the 80s now, you can say, oh, she was a mutant right there. And she was lying about that. For me, that enhances it. If it doesn't do that for you, then that you're not there are a lot of problems that you're going to have with comic book stories if that's not how your mind works.
I like the way you phrase that. Like it just becomes it is the truth now.
Yeah.
It is not corrective. It just is.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's something that was in the margins of the stories that you did not know, but now you do. And if you want to take that tool out of the toolbox of comic book writers and editors and these publishers, then to me, you're really hamstringing them. Because the character I just referenced, Winter Soldier, is one of the most popular characters in the last 20 years, and he's not even new. Bucky Barnes is not a new character. They found a way to dust off Captain America's old sidekick and make him a multi-million dollar generating character. Come on.
Especially because it plays with the story, right? It hits a moment of emotional resonance. Like
Yeah.
otherwise, it falls flat. It just becomes, oh, that was that was a move to do something. That was, we killed Miss Marvel, uh, and now she's a mutant.
Yeah.
Hmm. Gore Vidal brings up a good point. Alan Moore brilliantly played Swamp Thing's origin. It brought in many new readers like myself at the time to reading a title I had little interest in. Gore Vidal, if you were reading at that time, one, that's fucking wild, amazing. Uh, what what was the buzz around that? I'm curious because I obviously don't have that perspective. I've only read it from looking backwards. So I'd be curious to hear from your perspective how people took the change initially. Was that a retcon? Was that something that they felt like made sense? What was sort of the hubbub in the moment? And then did you feel that change as that went on, 30 issues in?
And that's a creative choice by Alan Moore.
Yeah,
And that's a creative choice some writers and creators will choose to use writing big two comics. That is a tool in the toolbox they can use, and some people just don't use it. And I don't think that diminishes the story at all. Um, they might need to just reference the story that happened right beforehand. They don't need to reference the exact origin of everything and kind of weave that in. But that's just everyone decides to use what tools they want to use for the job.
100%.
Right. It may not benefit the story to do that. And I think that's cool too. But I wouldn't want short of reboots, because I think reboots are obviously too massive for an individual writer or creative team to decide to do. But short of that, I wouldn't want writers to be unable to use the retcon or the resurrection, um in their arsenal of strategies. um Izzy's issue says, my ability to be at peace with the mess of big two continuity and reboots is why I've been able to handle messy transitions in other franchises that I like. Yeah, totally. I just feel like it comes with the territory of reading comics. At least, again, big two mainstream comics. Like, that's just what you have to be able to do. If you don't like that, how I don't even know how you could read this stuff. Ricky B says, most exciting Spider-Man runs of the last 20 years are the USM runs of Bendis and Hickman. Why is that? Character development, stakes, beginning, middle, end. Nah, I think that, like, beginning, middle, end. First of all, Hickman's run hasn't ended, so we have no idea about that. Bendis's run ended, but it certainly didn't end in a way where it was like, okay, this was what Bendis had planned from the beginning. Not by any means. Bendis never planned to introduce Miles. That was a thing that came up, and then he went down that road. So I don't think that that's why either. If Bendis's run isn't good because it ended, it was good because it was good. It was good stories. If Bendis or Hickman had a run on Amazing Spider-Man, you're telling me you don't think it would be good?
The thing too is that, like, I understand the want for a beginning, middle, and end. You want a complete story, but even though it's mainline comics continuity, a lot of these runs are complete stories. Just because Spencer's run on Spider-Man ended, and like, I don't know, 596 was a new creative, doesn't mean they didn't have a beginning, middle, and end. Spencer's run clearly has a start, clearly has an arc, and ends. Same for Zeb Wells' run. Zeb Wells' run actually has a pretty clear arc of where they go with that character. And you can read that in and of itself. I think you need to look past the numbers, and you just need to view it as creative runs on characters. I think with those runs, you'll get the same beginning, middle, and end that you would get in, Ultimate Spider-Man or something like that. You just might not get an origin, but you still get a beginning.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Like, is The Empire Strikes Back not a good movie because it doesn't have an ending, because it ends on a cliffhanger that necessitates you going to see the next movie to know what happens next? Of course not. It's a complete movie unto itself. If that's not something you can understand, then again, movies that don't stop at the first aren't for you, because there's more to be said. There is more to that story. And that's just something that, again, if you can't accept it, that's a you thing, but I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with that at all.
That's my favorite movie
Of all time?
of all time.
That's
Empire
pretty
Strikes
cool.
Back. I watch that. I watch that at least once a year.
I don't know you. I didn't know you had some game there, Marco. Damn.
Hey man, sometimes a little respect on it.
Steve Canaris says one more day is the fulcrum of this debate. The story was insane, and the continuous debate since is even more insane. Yeah, yeah. The reaction to it is insane. The story of it is nuts. The backstory is nuts. Um, but ultimately, to be honest with you, I don't even think that's a problem. It played out in front of our eyes. We saw it unfold. They took the marriage away. Big deal. I'd rather they found a story way to do it than a, not that it was necessarily great. I don't think it's a great story. But I'd rather they found that way to do it than to just have editorial have to say, like, okay, we're undoing this, and you restart with Spider-Man #1 and it's just a clean slate. I have no interest in that.
Peter Parker subtly not being married is the most relatable he's been to me.
Dude, this is a little bit of a deep cut for today's day and age, but hopefully you guys will get the reference. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Sure, a lot of people have seen it. All right. In season 4, maybe, Will Smith meets a girl named Lisa, and he falls in love with her, and she tames him, and they end up, the last episode is them getting married. They don't end up getting married, but they say they're going to stay together. Okay. The next season starts, and you never see Lisa again. They don't even explain really where she went or why she's gone. They just ended the relationship because that was what they wanted for that season. And now they need Will Smith to go back to being a playboy because that makes the show compelling. That's it.
That's what happened in that season?
That is what happened.
Marco,
No way.
it reminds me of Buffy coming back from the dead.
Oh, well, no, they explained that. They magicked her back.
Sure, but it doesn't, get rid of the fact that she died, and she dealt with that, and there was storyline for it too.
Sure.
Wait, I'm not over this Fresh Prince of Bel-Air thing. Hold on a second. So that whole season, they made me love this relationship and care, and they just away.
Gone. Not creatively. She didn't die. They didn't break up sadly. They didn't explain it. Will Smith has no moment of reflection upon her. It's just a wrap. You don't see her again. That's it.
I was in college, right?
Yep.
Yes, that's right. Jesus, what? Wow, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
damn. Fuck me up
Marley
today.
says Fresh Prince, both the mom change and the kid goes from 1 to 5 years old. Exactly. I genuinely think, and I'm sorry to anybody who this encompasses, but I genuinely think there are people who, I said break their necks earlier, who break their necks to make continuity and stuff like this a problem for them. And I don't think you need to do that. I truly don't. Like, embrace not overthinking it. Try that. Like, just embrace not overthinking it. It could help your ability to read and enjoy comics.
Sometimes all the anxiety and pressure you put on yourself trying to get in the comics, you could have read a whole arc already. You could have already been there. So just jump in, just dive in. Continuity is it's a benefit and a negative aspect at some points too. But I think all in all, it's beneficial to what Big Two Western Comics is. It can be a bit of a nuisance sometimes here or there.
And it's like,
that's fine.
It's fine because you know what, dude? At the end of the day, you've also probably read stories you didn't love. Yeah, and you move on, right? Like, not every comic book story is going to be written by Jonathan Hickman, Grant Morrison, Jeff Johns, Bendis. Like, there are other people who are going to write stuff that you're not going to like, and you could blame it on whatever you want. But at the end of the day, that story ends, a new one begins, and hopefully you enjoy that one more. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just kind of is what it is.
And that's a benefit to never-ending continuity in comics. It's that you might not like it now, but that's not the end of things, because give it, a year. And I know that sounds huge for someone that might be like new into the medium, but like there will be stuff that you will like eventually.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's so big, read something else and you'll like that instead.
Yeah. Next arc. Give it the next arc.
I want to take a quick moment. We are not done with this conversation. Do not go anywhere. I want to read a lot more comments and dig a little deeper on this for a few more minutes. So don't touch that dial, as they say. But I do want to take a quick moment to shout out some of our patrons. We will do some of the shout outs now and a few more later. Do not go anywhere. Special shout out to our Palsverse legends. Thunderstruck Rebecca Alejandro, the Hound of Justice Atomic Hound, who is with us, Starcross Catherine Stars, who's in the chat, Red Spiral Storm, who is in the chat, Adam and Bernie the Best Boy. And thank you to Palsverse members, the Night Stalker, Harris Zajinsky, Brian Demolisher Del Pozo, Kefis the Incorruptible, who's in the chat, Momentum Mike Elliott, Dan the Truth Trudeau's in the chat, Jalen the Sanguine Sorcerer, Marley Manistorm, who's in the chat, Slowflow Dameron, Christian Uncaged, who's in the chat, Always Laughing, who's in the chat, The Spear of Justice, Izzy's Issues, who's with us, Hyper Viper 89, The Great Destroyer, Robert Runback Cashaback, Pete the Dreamweaver Collins, Matthew Malice Price, and James Just Jamming Jones. If you didn't hear your name, I will get to you a little bit later on. Huge super chat bomb from our boy Matt Fisher. Thank you so much, Matt, for the $49.99. Wow.
Hot damn.
Marvel's only continuity problem is with Peter. It's their own doing. Peter's history is so screwed up that Jonathan Hickman main draw for his USM is that he's married again. While I enjoyed most of the New 52, DC damaged their continuity so much that it still has not recovered.
That is a good point, because when I think of Marvel continuity issues, I think of Spider-Man. Or issues, or perceived issues, let's say. I don't think of the Avengers. I don't think of Fantastic Four. I don't think of maybe X-Men, maybe. But is it exclusively a Spider-Man thing at Marvel?
When people say that, though, they're only referring to one thing.
I think they're referring to a couple things. Since Past, death of Gwen Stacy, the Clone Saga.
In terms of this specific issue?
Of continuity issues, yeah. I think Clone Saga is a big one.
Why?
A, it went on too long, and B, it added a whole bunch of clones, and you weren't sure which Peter was actually Peter, the Peter you're reading, and you have been reading for years. Was that your Peter?
But we're talking about now, like the things people talk about today.
Sure, when people I think one's overshadowed them. Yeah.
People talk about One More Day as the big thing. It's been a problem in people's minds for the last almost 20 years. And I say that's one problem, and I say you gotta move on. You have to move on. Otherwise, the character's storyline is a straight fucking line. It's a straight line, and even that's a straight line because you don't go backwards. The marriage being dissolved is not literally taking Spider-Man backwards in time. He's moving forward without a marriage. What is the problem? If he had gotten divorced, everybody would hate the fact that he's a divorcee. If Mary Jane had died, people would say it was fridging. They needed to get out of the marriage because they felt they had to, and this is the way they chose to do it. I don't understand why people cannot move forward. Marvel did.
Damn, he said, process your divorce and let's get it over with.
They did until Ultimate Spider-Man, where they were like, well, hold on, we'll give you what you want.
Is that a marriage even? I mean,
I don't know what's going on there, dude.
I don't know what's going on there, dude. It's happening again. The cycle
Mary
continues.
Jane in Ultimate Spider-Man is a doll. She's a doll. She has basically no agency. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't challenge Peter. She's there to be hot and to be the girlfriend that everybody reading wishes that they had. They have done nothing with that character.
Paul, where you at?
You're saying it's like a Mary Sue, but like for what you'd want, like not you, but your aspirations.
Yeah, she's an absolutely perfect person.
Shout out to J Sage for the £4.99. Really loving the discussion. This is the beauty of comics. DC reboots are over exaggerated. Retcons are fine too. No need to overthink. That's right. Pop that brain right out.
Stop thinking. Get rid of all those wrinkles. Take an iron to your brain. You just iron them out.
Smooth it out.
So the thing too, like with him saying that, or them, I don't know for sure. Retcons, DC reboots are over exaggerated, and honestly, that's what I find charming about DC as well. I came in around Infinite Crisis for DC, and I was able to be like, all right, this made no sense to me originally when I first read it. I'm like, what the? This Lex Luthor has hair? Like that was a sticking point for me. Um, and I went back and I did my archaeology, and that's when I realized, like, okay, there is fun to this. I will say, for people who are afraid of continuity, Wikipedia and those kinds of fandom pages are your best friend. That is not just because you're reading a Wikipedia to use it as an archaeology thing to know where you are currently doesn't make you less of a reader, in my opinion. I think it's a great way of learning things. I don't think you need to read the book, that came out, when your dad was a little kid to be a fan. So I don't want to like diminish that as well. Like, feel free. That's how I got into comics.
It gives you context for the thing that you're reading. Like if you're reading
Yeah.
something now, for sure. But if you've only read the Wikipedia and you're not reading some kind of comic to give yourself some kind of grounding into the not the emotion but the characterization, then fine. That I think works as opposed to just reading through something on a Wikipedia.
Man of Steel was Wikipedia knowledge for me until we read it for the book club. And I appreciated it for what it was on the book club, but that was my first time reading it. I had gone back and understood, all right, this is why all this happened because I did that, back research. Um, and I think it's also fine. You can get to stuff eventually.
Get Shitty says the real problem with Spider-Man is his first 30 years was rapid growth and the last 30 years are not. Sorry. It's whiplash in terms of sensation. My problem with that is that like it's really not rapid growth, right? Because realistically, he only became in those 30 years a young adult. He only grew to a young adult. So at most, in the first 30 years of Peter's life, you could say he aged 10 years. We meet him at 16. And you could say, I guess you could argue that by 90, he's 26 or so. Um, but that's it. That's really it. He spent a lot of time not growing, certainly not growing alongside us. And also keep in mind, when people are asking for him to have a more linear timeline, they're being extremely selfish because you can't apply your logic throughout all time. If everybody in 1960, whatever, 62, said, oh, Peter has to grow in perpetuity, then by the time 1990 hits, he's 40 years old. By the time 2006 hits, he's 60 something years old. You want him to have continued to grow in perpetuity, but that would hurt the character for the generations of people who came later and became Spider-Man fans. I don't want to become a Spider-Man fan of a dude who's 60 years old by the time I touch a comic book. That's not what I'm looking for.
I will say Constantine they did that with. He grew in age concurrently with the year. So like issue 300, I want to say he was maybe like 62 at that point. My dude was literally like retirement age, and those are the stories they were telling. Not obviously of like my dude's about to retire or whatever, but rather it's an older character who has been growing over the years, who since their appearance has all of these things tying him down, and it wasn't until uh probably until the New 52 that they started to address that stuff, like after his run ended, because they had two Constantines at that point, a young one and then the old one, and to that point they needed to bring him back, age him back down
Hmm.
to fully integrate him into the DC universe.
Matt Fisher with the 9.99. Man, Matt, thank you. You are holding us down. Really appreciate you. You cannot include X-Men. Every moment they have had is brought up in such a way that entices readers to check out those stories. Uh, One More Day sets more stuff way back than just Peter and MJ. I don't include X-Men. I think everything with them, pretty much makes sense. And like I said, the Moira thing is a retcon, but it's not something that you can only not understand it if it's a willful lack of understanding on an individual's part. There's nothing complicated about that. Ricky B says, not correct. Spider-Man felt older in the 90s and actually appears younger now. It doesn't matter how he appeared. Marvel would never have told you in the 90s that he was anything older than a 20-something-year-old person. That's what they would have said about pretty much every character.
If anything, I think the growth during Slot's run is the first time we got him to see, like, oh, he's out of college. He has his own industry, his own profession, his own company. That was some real forward trajectory for the character.
Yeah, I want to say in the 90s, if I remember correctly, his occupation, he was a teacher, right? Okay.
College professor?
Yeah. Okay. So he had a big boy job. That's cool. But Tyler's right. In Dan Slott's run, he also had a big boy job. So what's the difference? You're obsessing over a particular thing, which is the marriage, that has nothing to do with a person's maturity level. It just doesn't.
Ain't that the truth?
Damn. Yo, bring Spider-Man back to high school, okay? That's where he belongs. That's all that matters. He needs to be a starving photographer in at the Daily Bugle.
Rami Darwish here. Thanks, Rami, with a $5 super chat. The most fun I had with DC was picking up what was on the shelf and then going on a scavenger hunt back to Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Damn.
I think that personally, that's one of my favorite parts about comics. It is going back and putting those puzzle pieces together for yourself.
Yeah.
But I guess it's also the disposition of the reader that wants to go back, right? Who wants to be able to look and see, okay, how does this affect the thing that I'm reading now, if it does at all? And more likely than not nowadays, I feel like, if it's older than, honestly, if the numbers are still in the double digits, it's probably bad. Nothing that in the past 10 years has probably affected it.
Spiral Storm says his teaching job came in the early 2000s with JMS and not the 90s. Okay, so what was his job in the 90s? Was it a big boy job or not? That's the key factor. If it was a big boy job, then that's great. My point was that he has had big boy jobs regularly throughout the intervening years, from the 90s all the way to most recently.
And the only way to distinctly age him or mature him up post having a huge job after college is making him a parent, which they won't do. And that's why Ultimate Spider-Man exists. That's why Spider-Girl existed in a separate universe.
Kyle says Peter is a photographer during Mackey's Next Chapter series in 1998. He didn't become a teacher until, I think, 2000. So there you go. He had the same job as a photographer that he had for however long he did prior to that. That's like the basic Peter Parker job. He had a way bigger job during Dan Slott's run. Come on, what are we talking about?
It's because we moved from Reagan's economy to Clinton's, It's everybody.
Just accept the fact that you're mad about one thing. All this rigmarole is bunk. You're mad about one thing.
Well, I can't accept that he has a big boy job now.
Come on. Toasty says, I say we take Gunn's approach. If a past event is referenced in the story, that makes it in continuity.
Yeah, sure. Everything counts. I mean, that's the Morrison approach. Everything exists. Yeah. It's all there. Just pick and choose. Make it relevant.
Exactly. Matt Fisher. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marco.
Sorry. I guess that's the other piece is continuity and the sticklers therein don't allow the flexibility to make it relevant again. It has to fit within the confine or construct that it once existed in, and that is the only way that it can be perceived and enjoyed. It doesn't have the room to be malleable, to be plastic in that way, so that future writers can use it. If somebody had decided, you know what, Zur and R could never be used again because it's only within this context, we would have never gotten that amazing run on
Chip Zdarsky's Batman. Oh, yeah. I was saying that jokingly.
But you joke, but Marco, if you were to extend that even further back and say you couldn't do Zur and R after it was done the very first time in the Silver Age Batman, then Grant couldn't have used it.
And you know what? Undoubtedly, someone was like, "No, that's the Batman from Planet X. You can't use that."
And why not?
Did you talk to one of those guys in the forums, Sean, back in the day? Someone who's really
Uh,
into weird Silver Age Batman.
no, absolutely not.
Imagine. Your name Batman XX 1972.
1X short of a weirdo.
Yeah.
Jay Sage says, I think I love this channel more now because of these marriage opinions. I'm tired of people pretending that they care about the marriage. People just want to complain. I look, and I know how it sounds, but I genuinely feel like that, and I don't want to pretend that I don't. I genuinely think it's people who want to be mad.
I would also say Marvel is the world outside your window, right? Yep. Statistically speaking, most marriages don't last. Just saying, Marvel's just realistic.
We here are protecting the sanctity of marriage. Also, sorry, I don't know if we actually called out Matt Fisher's
There you
1999
go.
comment.
Yeah.
Over at DC, certain changes made in continuity can't change. 20 years of stories were lost when Brian Michael Bendis aged John Kent. They were fine until New 52. They had 17 years of history built up, and they still can't let us tell us if certain stories happened. But I think in that scenario, right, you do the thing that Tyler mentioned earlier that uh what was it again? Tyler, the story? I'm forgetting, I'm blanking.
Infinite
A World's
Crisis?
Finest. No,
Oh,
World's
World's
Finest,
Finest. Yeah,
sorry. You're these things happened within a certain time frame. Yes, he got aged up, but surely something happened in between. And if you're willing to tell the story, you're retconning it to fit within the confines of the limitation that you have. But you also have to give it grace to be accepting of those stories. I think that becomes the other issue.
I think again, DC did it to themselves. They did it to themselves with all that stuff. Like just tell clear-cut stories and that will all work out. I mean, my goodness, you talk about not being able to say what happened. Look at what happened during the New 52 when they tried to do an overall reboot and they couldn't even explain what was going on with Superman to the person who was writing Superman. Oh, shoot, by the way, a person named George Perez,
who's on our Rushmore.
who should be on everybody's Rushmore, one of the greatest creators of all time. And they couldn't even give him an answer as to what the continuity was. You want to talk about problems? Look at the problems that a blank slate caused. Well, excuse me, sorry, a blank slate with quotation marks because of Batman and Green Lantern.
Revolutionary Dragon with the $5 super chat. Superman, quote unquote, the most relatable character. Marriage and the family did wonders for Superman and got people to read Superman. It did work for me. It did work for me.
Worked for a bit.
It's great, but guys, this is the explanation that you don't necessarily hear. The reason why it works great for Superman and doesn't for Spider-Man is because the character that Superman is married to is baked into Superman's stories. It's Lois Lane. That is his, one true pairing, right? That's his designated lover. Who's the designated lover of Reed Richards? Sue Storm. How long have they actually stayed broken up? Not that long, because they're meant to be together. They go together. Spider-Man and Mary Jane do not go together. He wasn't made with her in mind. She's not his first love. She's not his second, third, fourth, or fifth girlfriend. She's just one in the line. Spider-Man was built to be a bachelor character.
Man, for a no-kill rule, Spider-Man has a fucking body count, huh? Jeez.
He sure does. He sure does. But that's the secret. These kinds of stories, when there isn't a character that they came in loving, generally they don't stick with one person.
What you're saying is that it's not built into the DNA of the character.
No, yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
It's not.
Because Spider-Man was a high schooler at the time. I don't even think it was more Archie than anything.
It was absolutely that. Look at those early comics. He's talking to Marco. You can help me. He's talking to Betty
Betsy.
Brant.
Betty Brant,
Yep.
yeah.
Oh,
Or
Betty,
Betsy,
yeah.
rather. Yeah. He's talking to what's the one girl? Not Felicia. The other blonde.
Felicity?
Felicity, I think her name is.
Felicity
She goes to
Shagwell?
school- that he goes to school with. There's multiple girls that Spider-Man is interested in before he meets MJ.
So you would argue, I think the argument here is that what's baked into Peter Parker and Spider-Man's identity and DNA is being a bachelor and will they, won't they's. And taking that away by having him with one particular person for a long amount of time takes away from the character.
It's the death sentence to Archie, right? Like that. That's why you can't. That's why you always have to have two opposing sides to it. You have to have them exist separately because one has to tug at the other. One has to pull it back. You can't really ultimately give somebody a satisfying answer because then well they got married. Yeah, you can tell the married life and there was a run. There was a run that does have them college years and life after, but that ended and they reverted back.
So the solution is what Riverdale did: make Spider-Man poly.
Hey, maybe, man, who knows?
You never know at Marvel.
One for each arm, right? Eight.
Those rent prices in New York City. I mean, it might be easier to split it in 4 ways instead
And
of
a
one.
photographer salary.
Right?
Matt Fisher with the 199. Matt, I really just thank you so much. Are you on our Discord, by the way? I would love to hang out with you. I like your opinions and I love your support. So thank you. Says side note and off topic, but is Brian Michael Bendis still at DC? No. He's been doing his own things. He's been doing a lot of creator-owned work.
Mostly Dark Horse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dark
let's
Horse.
say, yeah.
And another 199 from Matt. The other blonde is Deb Whitman. Deb Whitman, but then also Spiral pointed out Liz Allen. So look at all those women we've just said.
Gets around. He is shooting web everywhere.
And I would have risked it all for Liz Allen. Are you kidding me? Liz Allen?
That's Normie's
By the
mom,
way-
right?
Sorry?
Isn't that little Normie's mom?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. By the way, how many girls on screen, okay, has Superman been in a relationship with in the movies on screen?
So discounting Smallville.
Yes.
Maybe 2.
I know Lois Lane.
Yeah.
Have we ever seen him date or be romantically involved with another woman in a Superman movie? I cannot.
Lang?
I can't think. I've seen them all. He's certainly with her in the first 2 original Supermen. In Superman Returns, she's with some other guy, but they're still sort of together. And he's certainly not with anyone else. And in Man of Steel and the other Zack Snyder shit, he's with her.
There's no Lana Lang at any point in the movies.
I don't think we ever.
Superman 2, Lana Lang was in it as his old high school sweetheart. So
Hmm.
maybe not actively, but there was a bit of a will they, won't they? Yeah.
But
Even then, yeah.
he was with Lois, and they never get together. Okay, great. Let's play that game with Reed Richards. How many women has Reed Richards been with in the movies? 1.
The
One.
only one. Well, but it's built into the marriage.
How many women has Cyclops been with in the movies? 1. How many women has
Wrong
Spider-Man
one,
been
too.
with in the movies? Not 1. 2.
2, and then people keep clamoring for the 3rd.
I rest my case.
Brian Atkins just starts naming different women with Lana Lang, Lori Lamaris, Lois Lane.
How many-
Superman loves taking L's.
Yeah.
How many women has Batman been with in the movies?
Woo!
A new one every movie.
Exactly.
Chase
Catwoman is
Meridian.
not intended to be Batman's like lifelong love. So they're always going to do this dance, but DC's never going to let that shit happen because
telling
it's not
me-
what he's, huh?
Batcat's never going to happen?
No. He's James Bond. He's James Bond.
Sorry to spoil that, Tyler.
Spiral Storm says the other one is in blonde Liz Allen in high school. Deb he met in college. Yeah, absolutely.
I like how this continuity discussion became a relationships in comics discussion.
Yeah, well, right.
That's
yeah,
a big part of
because-
continuity is the relationships between the characters.
Yeah. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. Get Shitty says Spider-Man was married before Superman. Spider-Man was married before Superman because of a weird, I forget what exactly happened, but Stan Lee, it has something to do with the fact that he got married in the strips to MJ and then they adopted it. I don't remember the exact. There's some story to that. But the point is that the reason why we got on this subject is because Superman's marriage works because he's married with Lois, who is essentially baked into his character. It makes sense to progress in that way. It's why Reed has kids. If you can't follow my logic, I don't know what to say. I'm not making this up. This is what it is.
And there's no way for that to grow into that for the characters like a Spider-Man, because you can't tell. I guess because then you have to tell. I guess I'm trying to figure out even narratively then, like why can't you make it work or get to a point where you're at a, Reed and Sue level?
In the case of Spider-Man,
Yeah,
I just personally think, based on what Marvel clearly feels, that Spider-Man wasn't created to be that character. They don't want, that's not who, if you're so like, okay, if you take the concept of archetypes that we use to talk about DC and apply it to Marvel, Spider-Man is clearly the everyman he's supposed to be relatable to people of a certain age. That age is not 30 plus. That age is teenage to 20s. That's the age that Spider-Man is meant to represent and reflect. Whereas clearly Reed Richards is meant to represent the family man. He deals with the struggles of the family man. Superman isn't obviously meant to represent the everyman necessarily, but he is a guy who is aspirational. He's got a perfect family. He is essentially a perfect person. His problems aren't problems of character flaws, they're of the world and dealing with the world. Very, very, very different character slates that lead to different kinds of storytelling.
Well, and Superman's also the idea of like the American way, like the nuclear family in a way. So him having
Yeah.
a family is tracks, even though in current continuity we forgot that he has two adopted kids. But who cares?
yo, the world throwing Spider-Man W's, bro. She's got too many girls to handle. He can't do it all.
Until one of them falls off a bridge.
Yikes! He doesn't catch that one. He misses it.
Oh, he catches her.
We've got about 90 of you hanging out with us here. Make sure you smash that like button if you are enjoying the conversation. Make sure you guys are subscribed. We're trying to make it to 5,000 subs, and the only way we can do that is if more of you press that button. So thank you to everybody who does that. And super chats are open, as you have seen from Matt Fisher, who was holding us down today. Matt Fisher actually dropped another $2 on us and said, "I'm 37 and can't figure out how to work Discord, brother. I am 34. It is nothing that hard. If you want an explanation, here it is. Download Discord onto your computer or your phone, download the app, create an account. You know how to do that. We will send a link right now into the chat so that you can click it, and that will put you on our server. The rest is pretty much cake. And then the legion of people in our community, we are nearly 300 on our Discord, can help you figure out the rest, brother. Thank you.
We had a heated
Sent.
discussion about Daredevil yesterday.
I'm gonna
Something to
pin
look
it
forward
too
to.
for anybody else who is
nice.
new listening in. For you lurkers who haven't yet quite decided to join, it's pinned as well. So
And
making it easy.
if you want to join the Discord and lurk there too, you can. Some people do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all fun. Get Shitty said, I follow Sean's logic. Name someone after MJ. That's why people are still hung up on MJ and the marriage, and she still feels like the end goal. The reason why, mind you, Carly Cooper, right? But the reason why MJ feels like the end goal is because Marvel wants you to feel that way, brother. Like, I want you guys to see that you are being manipulated. She doesn't disappear because she is intended to be a supporting character in his life who represents the potential best future ever, but he's not going to get that because they don't want him to be perpetually happy. He's not meant to be that.
The nerdy Poindexter science kid who does photography can bag the world-renowned supermodel.
Right. That's fantasy land for the most part. And that's what USM feels like. Not to denigrate the quality or whatever, but it feels like fantasy land.
Playtime, bro.
They even to make it more relatable, they had to make Mary Jane a retired model.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
her looks faded. She's 34. Oh my goodness.
DiCaprio's already
Look
out.
away.
Yeah.
Rami Darwish with the 2 spot. Superman is a family man from Kansas. Exactly. 100%. 100%. Come on. Hey, comics are dope. What's up, man? What's up, BJ? The hip kids had to teach me how to use Discord. I was on Facebook living the dinosaur life. Feel you. Gavin Gidry, what's up, Gavin? Um, Lana is always designated as a part of Clark's life in Smallville. Then she marries Pete Ross and comes in and out of Superman's life on the periphery. But who is always the focal point? To your point, Lana represents. She's intended to represent the first love, the love of a bygone era. She's a sweet, soft person. Look at Lois. She's a hard ass. She challenges Clark. She challenges Superman. It makes sense. They go together. It's almost like it was developed that way. I'm not speaking to you, Gavin. I'm just making a general statement.
Yo, Lois is like, sorry, we have a dinner. Those trousers? No, you're changing.
Trousers.
That's
Marley,
right. They're different from pants.
Marley says 35 and I'm getting shadows under my eyes, seen and felt. We're all living that life. We're all living that life. I got these grays going. Just for men, nah. I'm in my Reed Richards era.
Embrace it.
That growth.
Embrace it. Just for men.
Yeah.
I'm saying just let it go, guys. Come on. It's fine.
Yeah.
Salt and pepper, man.
Yeah, exactly. Spiral Storm says I might write a piece on Discord now about why the marriage matters to me. Please do. I want to read it. I want to read it. I want to read what you have to say, Spiral. I love your thoughts.
Banksy Main says everyone leaves out the mermaid Clark was in love with as Superboy.
I want to see that. He had a mermaid? I was, never mind.
It's like Willow in the comics.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was there for that. Uncanny Suit says Marvel got what they wanted. I'm done with the MJ marriage. It's so annoying to still talk about one more day 20 years later. Totally, bro. Like, come on, man. 20 years?
It's giving divorced dad energy. Let's get on the apps, buddy. Come on. Get on there.
He's
Move
probably on them.
Yeah.
He's on them.
he might be making them.
He has a baddie right now. You worried about MJ? She got Paul. This.
Sean, what's her name?
What?
What's her name?
Sean.
No, his current girlfriend. It's like Shay? Shay?
I think it's Shay. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He has a girl right now. Paul's with MJ. Let those two be great. They raised children together. They did it all. Quite frankly, MJ in Mainline 616 had done more with Paul than she's done with Peter. How about that?
They did that? Damn.
They raised kids. And they did that, Marco.
Wow.
They were alone together. They were alone together in a separate world. They did that.
Wow.
We never got the end of those kids, right? Like, those kids are never coming back.
They're never coming back. Never. Come on now. Oh, man. Gavin says, I'm 36 and my 3-year-old broke a pepperoncini jar this morning about 30 minutes after waking me up and singing Hot to Go. Oh, my goodness. Is that what you guys want to read in Spider-Man comics? Is that the domestic issue you want to see Peter dealing with? You want to see him webbing up glass and putting that pepperoni jar back together?
A broken glass in the morning is one of the worst things ever. And especially with like pepperoncini smell, that's going to stay there for way too long.
Tyler, I love how we were both kind of jumping on the Provenzini.
Sorry, I'm a fat ass. I can't help it.
No, we both were. I'm just saying.
Marowak Escuro says Spider-Man shouldn't have gotten married so early. They didn't know what to do with it. Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think. Again, there's a story behind it. I don't remember it. I don't think it should have happened, quite frankly, because it just. I don't know, man. I made the Will Smith point. Watch Family Matters. Why does it take until the end of the show for Urkel and what's her name to get together? It's all the same shit. Come on.
Matt Fisher does say, pre-Brand New Day, Spidey beat Hydra single-handed. Post-Brand New Day, can't even fight White Rabbit without total chaos ensuing. Huh? And I would argue, that just proves how far White Rabbit's leveled up.
Hey, but I would argue post-Brand New Day, Spider-Man beat Green Goblin with the Carnage symbiote. That was badass.
And he also seems to be able to dispatch the Sinister Six very quickly nowadays.
But, I mean, you want to talk about maturity and growth. he has figured out how to beat their ass. It used to take at
Can't do
least 2
shit.
issues, at least a 2-part arc to get through them boys.
You're busy like trying to figure out where Chasm and Scarlet Spider are right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Come on. Oh man, I love you guys. Get Shitty says Sean, I agree. Move on from MJ. Say divorce, move forward. I personally, like, I know why Marvel didn't do it, but I would have been okay with a straight up divorce. But it's not super heroic. It's not flashy. It's not, it's not. They got a lot of mileage, in story out of what they did with One More Day. It allowed them to do things they wouldn't have been able to do. Like they were able to bring Harry back and, say whatever you want about how it happened, but I'm happy that Harry's alive. Marley says, don't watch Boy Meets World in 2024 with random syndication and no binging. Sitcom continuity never had to make sense.
God forbid a sitcom introduces a baby.
Saved by the Bell.
Yep. Oh my goodness. Come on. Dan said it's almost like his power level and competencies change based on what the story requires. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based on who's writing them, who's drawing them.
And by the way, it's the same for everybody. It's the same for everybody.
C.W. Gordon says, isn't Harry dead again? Is he alive again?
I don't even know.
Won't he
I don't
die
even know.
again?
He's dead again. I think he's dead again. Yeah.
He died after what's it called? Didn't he die? Spencer.
Run. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
the weird centipede guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Absolute overthinker with the 5 spot. Thank you. Shout out to Revolutionary Dragon's words a few weeks ago about growing out of anti-woke / rage grifter algorithms. Thanks, Sean, for your kind words also. You're going to hear some more words from me about you, Absolute Overthinker, a little bit later because your origin is on the way today. But thank you for the 5 spot. Really appreciate it. And I agree with what you're saying as well. So ultimately, kids, continuity, I think it's a gift. I think sometimes we can curse it, but I don't think that it is a curse. I think it's a tool like any other. You bring out a wrench for a hammer problem, you're not going to have a good time. Sometimes it's the right way to go to lean heavily on continuity and you use it to your advantage. Like I think we can say Grant Morrison has done. I think we can say Hickman has done. I think we can say Jeff Johns has done, and on and on and on and on. But other times your story might be better for a more relaxed continuity environment. And by the way, we could list a lot of those too. Spider-Man Life Story is one of the best stories that I've read over the last decade. What it does is it plays on what you know and it synthesizes it all into one long story. I think that's really cool. And that is the best thing about what Big Two comics can be. They can be anything. We don't have to choose. You get to have your cake and eat it too on a weekly basis. Because if you don't like ASM, you have USM. And if you don't like that, you have Life Story. Go read it again.
Go back to make count whatever counts for you.
You
That's
got
the best
family.
part.
You got family home movies. Do you ever watch those to reminisce about the good old days? That's the same thing as pulling out an old comic and saying, wow, remember when Spider-Man comics were good? Yippee-yee. But you get to do that and you can enjoy it all over again. I think that's okay. Marco, of course, holding up a random issue of random Rockefellers. Oh, it's the ash can.
Yeah, with the Hornsby and Halo.
Too, yeah.
How'd you get that?
Psh, I know people.
That was at a.
I know people.
We were lining New York Comic Con when we got that.
Yeah, they're giving out.
Yeah, we waited in line,
Oh.
Sean. Unlike Mister, I didn't
Oh.
see the line and walked right in.
Dude, I was waving my press badge as often as I could. I'm not, I don't go there to stand around. Get shitty with the 5 Canadian. All this Spider-Man talk, you've lived up to being a Marvel podcast this week, guys. You're right.
We're the DC Defenders.
Thank you, Get Shitty. Really appreciate that. Gage says, so you guys wouldn't like a run where there's a teen arc, wonder and fiction, young adult arc, grounded fiction, marriage, slice of life with action, and post-married, gritty, darker, peaty.
No, that's perfectly fine. I think that's perfectly fine. Go through all of that, and then get me back to the teen arc.
And they even tried doing that a couple years back. Remember when like Sensational Spider-Man was a book? It was like, hey, here's young Spider-Man during high school. Um, it's continuity light, but they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. Like, hey, Spider-Man is this globe-trotting Avenger at this point. Here's Spider-Man in his infancy. You could read those too.
Yeah, like okay, if it something like that. But I thought we were talking. I was I guess maybe I read that wrong. If the idea is, you know, straight line main continuity, going back to one and seeing that progression, no, I don't want to see
I
that.
see.
If it's a separate story or whatever, then yeah, absolutely, there's room for that. Kyle says nothing gets Sean more heated than one more day. No, no, no. I'm cool with one more day. What gets me heated is people who still think that that story is relevant 20 years later. I just don't. I don't. Marvel could put those two characters back together if they wanted to. They just don't. They don't want to. Toasty says even all of DC's reboots are never a hard reboot from scratch. They always repurpose previous continuity. Just see New 52's Batman. Yeah, absolutely. They have their cake and eat it too all the time. Again, that's what you get to do with comics.
Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Now, you guys have been amazing so far. Thank you so much for that. Really, really appreciate all of your super chats. Appreciate all of your comments. We've got a lot more show to do. I want you guys to stick around because what we're gonna do a little bit later. I forgot to announce this earlier. That's my bad. We're gonna bring back the wheel. We're gonna spin the wheel and play a game at a likes goal. How many likes are we at right now? Can
I
someone?
just refreshed. I see 68.
Okay.
One more.
I
Come
feel
on.
like. Sorry.
Just one more.
I feel like we can get that to 80. So if we get that to 80, then we will spin the wheel. We will play a game a little bit later on in the show. We'll have a good time. Uncanny Suit says, did Sean concede that Blade bet yet? Hell no. Nope. There's no reason to. The movie will still come out as far as I'm concerned. Marvel told us. So, by the way, we did have a poll running. We've had it running for an hour. It's gotten over 100 votes. That's amazing. Thank you guys. How do you feel about continuity in comics? So obviously a ton of you answered, and these are the results. It's okay. I see both sides is 60% of you. Love it. It makes things better. It's 32% of you. I'm surprised by how low that is, quite frankly. Hate it. I'd rather have none is only 6%. So that's a good sign. It's good. It's a good sign that the majority of you understand the value of content. That's a positive. All right. So we've got more stuff to get into. We're going to talk a little bit later about a potential relaunch of Superman and Batman comics, which has a lot of people worried. We're also going to talk about tariffs. Our next president has talked about tariffs, and there's a way
ready.
that. Sorry.
Get your popcorn ready for a lengthy discussion about tariffs and taxation.
Yes, there is a potential for that to have a negative impact on the comics industry. So we're gonna have a very normal conversation about that. We've got a couple of announcements to make. We've got some big guests on the horizon. We are closing out the year in style because this Tuesday,
Let's go.
on December 3rd, we will be joined at 8:30 p.m. Eastern by one of my favorite artists of all time, somebody who is doing career best work right now as Marco fumbles his Spider-Man. We're going to be talking to Ghost Machine's Rook Exodus's Jason Fabok. He's going to be joining us at 8:30 p.m. Eastern to talk about Ghost Machine, talk about Rook Exodus, talk about DC, talk about whatever we feel like talking about. Come hang out with us, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a great time hanging with Jay. That's his first time on the podcast, so I can't wait for that.
We've been trying to get Jay for a while. Talking to him in person. He's a really chill dude, so should be fun.
Yeah.
It's so exciting. It's caused an explosion.
This is why you turned off your camera and ruined my stream layout. for a second for this
For a hot second,
this
I pressed
bit.
the wrong button. I pressed the wrong button.
Damn.
Not worth the bit. But you should keep that fire there because we've got another guest announcement to make. It's not over.
What? Another?
Another. It gets bigger and better. Well, I don't know. I want to say bigger or better, but it gets huge because next week, December 7th, we will be joined by none other than the brilliant Al Ewing.
Oh,
There we go. That you committed on that one. Thanks, Marco.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the commitment. Yeah, Al's going to come on and talk as much as he can about Metamorpho, talk as much as he can about Absolute Green Lantern, Immortal Thor, just everything. Al's always fun to have on. I think this will be his third main show appearance here, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yo, and my dude can talk about Metamorpho. We had a chat while we were setting up for the interview that went on like I forgot. Sean went somewhere, or like we were setting up the camera plus the mic, whatever it was, and he and I, was just going deep into the lore about that kind of stuff. He's a great chat, very eloquent in how he speaks about things, and so that one I'm really excited for.
I can't wait to be on the show, but feel like I'm just listening to it.
Yeah.
Dude, I love listening to Al Ewing talk.
Gavin says in regards to hearing Jason Fabic coming on the show, Gavin said, "Hope y'all put him on the spot too."
Well, hey, I feel like with some of the Ghost Machine people, we've developed a relationship to where we can put them on the spot a little bit. And one thing I like about Jason, and one thing I like about Gavin as well is what feels like a very honest approach to talking about comics. And sometimes, you talk to certain people, and it can feel like a pitch session. It can feel like, I'm not going to be real with you. And those aren't that fun. I like the people who get a little bit gritty. Gavin got gritty with us last week. Hopefully Jay will get gritty with us on Tuesday. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time. I also want to thank Swagum and Zenith Flair for joining the Discord today. Hope you guys enjoy hanging out with us over there. It's always a fun time. We have our next book club nomination thread up. We're doing Image. We're going old school, and by old school I mean about a decade ago. We're going Image 2010s with it. This is arguably the greatest era of Image Comics, that 2010s era. And so we want you guys to nominate your favorite books that released between 2010 and 2019 for us to do our next book club on. So you go to any of those threads, be it on patreon.com/thecomicspals, youtube.com/thecomicspals under the community tab, or our Discord server, nominate your favorite Image comic. The 4 most nominated books are going to make the poll, which will be up on Patreon for a member of any tier. And the winner of that poll will be the subject of the book club, the final one of the year, which will take place allegedly on December 31st. I say allegedly because we'll see how, that's December 31st, pretty big day. But we should be able to make it happen. So, set your watch and warrant to it. I'm excited to see what the people pick.
Yeah, there's so much potential for that. That era holds a special place in my heart. It's where I started reading weekly comics, and so there's a lot to mine there. I know some of the smaller books definitely aren't going to win, but it's going to be the big ones that even then had huge popularity, but also huge impact to my reading. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, same, because there's a lot that I don't think I read back then.
Yeah,
I read the beginning of East to West. I read a lot of number ones back then.
Yeah,
but
every number one was a pickup.
Maybe even a number one trade, the first trade. These things are cheaper. But more than that I haven't. So this should be an interesting read.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff from that era that I haven't read. I've seen a little bit of a push for Monstrous because of how many times that's come up on the show. Some of you trying to finally get me to read it. Quite frankly, if Monstrous were chosen, it depends on what the guys want to do, but like we might not even get to the point at which I stopped reading the book.
Yeah. I was thinking that. I was thinking that while we were seeing votes for it, I'm like, damn, if we do it, we're probably gonna do like maybe 3 trades. But honestly, I dropped at like 20 something.
Right, exactly. Like I'm gonna read the same shit I've already read, and that's not gonna motivate me to get all my monstrous issues together and read them. It's not gonna happen.
I saw some a good amount of votes for East of West.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wick Div too.
Wick Div. Oh, Wick Div. Would be Die. You ever read Die?
No.
No.
The other Gillen. Oh my gosh.
Can we say what we'd most like to read?
Ooh.
I have two answers to this one. Deadly Class, because I never read it. I have issue one, read issue one, and I just had too much to read at that point. That's the one I've never read that I would like to read. The one I'd like to go back to is Snot Girl, which
Oh man.
we'll talk about. We'll check out Monday's show to hear about that one. Yeah,
Snot Girl's fire. Didn't we did a book club on Snot Girl
We
many moons ago.
we did, but it was still coming out. Then it like never finished. Yeah, yeah. We set
Next
some ground
issue-
rules after that.
Yeah, yes, we did. The next issue drops this Wednesday, crazily
is-
enough.
Back?
Finally, yeah.
well, I'm going to talk about it on the Monday show. Don't worry.
Oh,
Yes,
shit.
indeed. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah.
Gage says, want to hear about Dragata's book. That's East of West, I think.
Yep.
And that is my pick. East of West is my pick alongside Deadly Class because I've never read East of West, and it's one of the Hickman books that I haven't touched.
I don't think I could tell you what East of West is about. I think it's
Nope.
like Horsemen of the Apocalypse,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, I read the first 2 trades, and this was early in my reading career, and uh, Hickman was just operating at a different level for me at that time. I couldn't process certain things, the imagery, the way that he was telling the story, all amazing world building. But I feel like I wasn't quite there yet. So I would actually want to go back to that. That's not my go-to. My go-to would be Wick Div just to do that reread. I love that series. There were so many issues, two that I can remember off the top of my head that made me cry. That I'm like, yo, this is such an impactful book for me. I would love to go back.
That feels like something I missed the boat on. I
Yeah.
really sort of regret not buying it at the time, but it felt, to be honest, I kind of got the impression that Kieran Gillen's work was pretentious,
Mm.
and that was a turnoff for me. Now I still feel like it's probably pretentious, but I want to read it. I want to see it. I think he's super talented.
Yeah.
Were you on Tumblr at that point, Sean?
I've never been a Tumblr
Okay,
person.
that book was hot on Tumblr.
I bet. I mean, it was hot at the other place we used to work at, so I that's all anybody could ever talk about was that damn comic book. So I felt I had some FOMO at the time, but I resisted. Jay Sage left us a comment that I really wanted to read. Jay said, "This is a really fun community. I'm loving the discussion and the hosts every time. Really glad I found the channel." Thank you so much for saying that, Jay. We like to have a good time around these parts, and the hope is always that you guys have a good time with us and recognize that, for the most part, we're just we're having real conversations, but we're also, we're doing it in a certain spirit.
Yeah, the Discord's good too, for that community. I know Marvel Rivals comes out next week, and I know a couple people on the Discord are going to want to play that, including me. So there's some opportunity for just chilling, hanging out outside of the podcast.
I'd be down. Just go on voice chat. I'll watch everybody play.
You're gonna be a video game cuck.
Damn, I might do that. I haven't thought about playing Marvel Rivals, but if it's gonna be
Yeah, just hang out. Yeah, just a little fun. It's free.
if it's us, then
It's free?
Yeah, it's free. Unless you want to buy the skins and stuff, which there's some
Nah.
really cool skins in it. Just saying.
Nah, I'm not. I'll
Demon,
do the
Demon Day
Fortnite method.
Psylocke is in it.
I'll play Fortnite, level up, 7 levels, and then get it all reset next season.
that's annoying.
Oh, dude,
The best part. That's the
I
best
don't
part.
get any perks. I'm dying left and right, dude.
Man, I love
And
playing. The few times I played with you, Marco, was great because they just give me bots. So it's like, oh, you're playing with him. Give him the easy ones.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll put something together. I mean, Tyler, if you take the initiative on that, then
Yeah.
maybe that can materialize.
Yeah.
All right. let's get into some news because Superman and Batman may be on the precipice of a major change. And that could be seeing those two legendary series return to issue number one. So this is a very controversial subject. I mean, gosh, we just talked at length about the concept of continuity. And one of the things that's important to long-standing readers of comics who do also love continuity is that number, that legacy number that represents all that Titanic history that we love so much. You know, you can sort of feel a level of erasure when you see that number go from, in the case of Batman, for example, right now, 158 to 0 or 1 in this case. Um, Now, it's not unheard of. We saw a new number 1 during the New 52 for all these books, and then Batman was renumbered again when Tom King came on. Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee are coming back to Batman with
Hush Tua.
Hush Tua. And quite frankly, by what Rich Johnson says on Bleeding Cool, DC is looking at this as an opportunity to hit the reset button on those numbers and just bring their two biggest characters back to number one. So, Superman has a movie coming out next year, of course. The Batman Part 2 is also on the horizon. We have a hot creative team potentially coming on board. So, DC is looking at this situation and saying, hey, maybe we just reboot the whole thing. Rich Johnson specifically says, quote, first heard at Thought Bubble a couple of weeks ago, firmed up a little since, is the word that DC Comics is planning to relaunch both their Superman and Batman ongoing comics in 2025. That we will get a new number 1 to follow Jeff Loeb, Jim Lee, Scott Williams, and Alex Sinclair's upcoming Batman Hush 2 run on the series from 158 to 163. And that Superman will also get a relaunch alongside the release of James Gunn's new Superman movie. Rich also points out that both series were meant to have a relaunch with 5G. Now, anyone who's followed the 5G story, watched our video on the 5G files, that deep dive that we did. I love to plug that because I think that was brilliant. It also followed a lot of reporting that Rich did. But anybody who knows about that stuff knows that that is absolutely true. It was meant to be a fresh start, and it was meant to be a path forward for DC into a new era that would have necessitated new number ones because we were getting away from Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent altogether. But they didn't do that, so we were able to get Batman 100 under James Tynion, and of course, both series have continued on since. Well, Superman didn't. Superman right now was rebooted with Joshua Williamson coming on board. Action Comics was not. So we would see both these series go back to number 1. How do you guys feel about that? Does that bother you?
So is this positing it's just a new number 1 instead of a continuity reset?
New number 1, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm used to this at Marvel because DC will probably it's Superman and Batman, not Detective in Action, so they'll probably even still just do legacy numbering on it. Like I think with legacy numbering, this kind of negates the hubbub that happens with these new number 1s. I think it's clear like the reason it's there, jumping on point in readers and to pop a number. Storyline wise, it's whatever at this point. This doesn't bother me. If anything, it's just another number 1 we can talk about on the show.
Man, I don't like this. I don't like because to me this consistently just reads out as, you know, we're getting short term thinking from the companies. Like, yes, we want the small gains. You know, we want to be able to win the people who are going to come in for a number 1 at the right timing. The timing is right, all that kind of stuff. But I find that frustrating because we're not the companies aren't growing. They're instead falling back into the low hanging fruit. I mean, I think those are good when it's needed, but if this starts, then Superman's going to start. Then I don't want this to happen to all of in a similar way to what happens at Marvel, where, you know, every new creative relaunch, or even in some cases not, right? merits a number one to artificially boost sales for that book. I think stick to the legacy of this. Stick to the promote it as a new jumping on point instead. Promote it as, hey, you're yes, this is 130. What was it? 158.
Mhm.
And it's going to end at 164. Then fine, 164 is going to be the new place to start. New story arc, new creative team. Give us something that because I think what comic book readers need to be learning nowadays is how to jump into a long ongoing series. One of the things in one of the reports that we did in the new 52 deep dive was how other how fans viewed books that had longevity. It meant that they were of quality. It means that they had staying power. It means that they were reliable. I want that for these comics, and having the new number one, I feel like hampers it.
Why put effort into having to market something as a new jumping on point at a obtuse number like 164 when it's implicit in a number one?
It is implicit, but I would want the reader to learn a better lesson, and I think the better lesson is you can jump on into any book at any point. I think that that is a lost art for modern comics. It's for the number one because well, there's so many number ones. Surely it's going to relaunch at some point. Let me wait around as opposed to let me jump on a longer series because maybe that provides an opportunity for somebody to be like, oh, this was a jumping on point at 163 for Batman, and I've been loving it. Maybe the same happens for Green Lantern. Maybe the same happens for Detective Comics or for Action Comics because these are one this is one book in a mix of many that have long runs at the moment. So give that its time.
I mean it's tough, right? Because on the one hand, I am a sucker for the legacy numbering. That's what I want to see. But on the other hand, I also recognize that, the taste of readers who are coming in has changed from the way it was in decades past, and they think a new number one represents something that is accessible and not something that's just unproven. Like that, we just have shifted in our thought process. But I also agree with you that teaching fans a lesson and conditioning them makes sense. I mean, we've been conditioned to appreciate the new number one. They did this. We didn't do it. Marvel and DC are the ones that pump the number one. Marvel more than DC. Um, and I think that like that is why people want it because we've been getting it. I don't think it has to be that way, but somebody who has a little more sway than I do disagrees with what I just said. And that is none other than Tommy B, Tom Brevoort, my fave. Tom Brevoort said in a newsletter, I think that if DC is satisfied with this approach, and that's in reference to not relaunching every comic in on DC All In with a new number one, I think that if DC is satisfied with this approach, then that's all that matters. However, if they're relaunching titles with new creative teams and new directions, then they're probably leaving money on the table by not starting with a new number one. If it's the same team, though, I can see why you would continue with the numbering. See, I get Tom Brevoort's logic, but like, did Titans that was at issue 13 when Tom Taylor's run ended really need to go back to issue one just because John Layman and I can't remember the artist. I'm sorry, just because they were coming on? Does that does that need to be a new number one?
Yeah, it doesn't necessitate that. It if anything, it's like okay, cool. Again, new creative team. That's it. That's easy. That's comics.
But like, there's a movie coming out. You want to make it easy. Like, I know us as comic fans want the legacy, we want the renumbering, or we want numbering to kind of stay the same. Especially, when you're in the long box and you're organizing stuff and you're pulling comics out. But if James Gunn's Superman comes out, and it seems like they want to market the books with the movie in some form or fashion. If they can market the books with a brand new number one right at the beginning of the movie, it's that keeping it simple for people is the smarter move.
Think of the long box, Tyler.
I do constantly. That's how I started this whole business.
It's a better business decision in 2024, or I guess it'll be 2025, to do the new number one than not. I will not argue with that because I
Sure.
think at the end of the day, that's logical, and I'm never going to challenge logic. Personally, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And I think that there is something to be said about trying to teach readers that it's okay to jump on wherever. But if they're not going to use language to denote that, then just keeping that big chunky number doesn't say that. And if they're not willing to say it, then it's not necessarily implicit.
DC, promote your books. Uh,
And
sorry, and that's where I lie with, and that's where I lie too, right? Like, I'm gonna default to what is more profitable for the business because that is good for the industry. But I would want new readers to learn maybe a little bit differently, or at the very least to learn that there's two ways you can jump into a book. Chris Stewart here just jumped into the chat. You know, welcome. Hey Gavin, I'm only a sample size of one, but I picked up my first ever comic in summer, Ultimate Spider-Man #1, and I've fallen in love with the medium. But I'm pulling exclusively the Ultimates line and now the Absolute line with no interest for the mainline universe stuff. That's a way to come into comics. That is a way to uh, pick up and enter the world. But let's say Ultimates goes down the line, Absolute goes down the line. Now it falls on Chris or any new reader to jump into mainline. Those things will end, and you don't have the history or you don't have the confidence to jump in on Batman 164. I think that potentially hurts that.
and you know, in 12 issues, Absolute Batman won't be as accessible as it is at issue 1. And then what? Do you need to relaunch with a new number 1 for every arc? Like what's the end game of the idea that you need a new number 1 to entice new readers? If a new number 1 is the only tool in your toolbox to do that, then this industry is in big ass trouble. And also, I agree with what Gavin said right here, which is, are new readers really flocking to new number 1s, or is it collectors pushing the numbers up? You always have to consider that. A new number 1 is a potential collector's item, whereas Batman number 12 is not, unless something really significant happens in that. But how many new readers does that actually represent? Like, for example, if it, let's say the average like main show episode of the Comics Pals gets about 3,000 views. Let's say that we get 3,000 hits on an episode of this episode, right? But we've got 4,000 plus subscribers. Out of those 3,000 that watched, how many of those people are finding us for the first time? If we don't, if we only say, wow, 3,000 people watch, that's awesome. And we're cool with that same 3,000 every time, but it's not representing of new readership. We're not growing. There's no growth there. It doesn't matter if you entice more people to get the number 1 if it's not really anybody new.
Heard it here first, folks. Comics Pals #1, all new, all different next week with with Al Ewing.
Yeah. Comics Are Dope says you got to either renumber or put some corny text on the cover. A new day starts here. Word. Yeah, yeah. The dawn of the new day for Batman, #1. Like it's always some gimmick shit like that. And I get it.
I
You
love that
know,
shit.
yeah. Yeah. You got to put something splashy on there. Make people come to the table. I don't know. It's a tough. I don't envy the big two in this situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Dan Trudeau says this is all theoretical until someone invests some money into market research. I've seen no evidence this is happening. Hmm. I get when you say you've seen no evidence that this is happening, are you saying you've seen no evidence that new readers are coming on board because of new number 1s? Because go ahead.
It doesn't help that new number 1s are currently marketed in the same comics that they're trying to attract new readers. I think marketing needs to happen outside of comics for that number 1 to work properly.
Yeah, that's fair. the efficacy of it is based not on the people it already hits who are already leaned into it, because those are easy converters, right? Those are people that were probably going to do it anyway. So how do you actually measure true lift?
Exactly. Right. If it's not bringing more people into the fold, then you're just swimming in dirty water. It's the same people buying the same books. Absolute Batman #1 sold over 400,000 copies. It sold out multiple times. That clearly represents way more people than are reading mainline Batman. But does it represent more people than uh does it represent new people coming to comics, or does it just represent people from Marvel who don't buy Batman but say, "Hey, it's Absolute, it's a new #1, let me check it out." Like we need more people in the ecosystem, and I want to see the gimmicks that are going to bring that to life, not just, the same old people.
Sure.
It's not enough. But new #1s aren't the biggest danger to comics right now. Right now, the biggest danger to comics are tariffs.
Oof.
Yeah. So we've got a new overlord, or an impending new overlord in the dear old United States, and we're not going to make any political statements, but this individual has declared that they will be introducing tariffs.
Oh, damn it, Doom.
Oh, trust me, I was looking at editing a One World Under Doom cover, but I figured that might be a little too much, a little too on the nose.
And so a lot of people celebrated this at first because they thought it meant that we would be collecting money from other countries for all of the things that we export. But that's not what it means. What it means is that essentially we are going to be paying more for things that we import. And by paying more, I mean and I mean to the tune in some cases of 25%.
Yeah,
Now,
it's
yeah, go ahead.
no go ahead. I'm about to get on my soapbox, but you finish off.
Okay. Now, of course, there were a lot of people who were celebrating the idea of tariffs until they found out the reality, and now, they feel like they were sold a bill of goods. But our focus is on how this will affect comics. So we get a lot of our comic books printed outside of the US. In fact, a lot of them are printed in Canada because Canada's got a lot of trees and they've got that whole system figured out over there. So we might see a 25% increase on the price of comics. Here I'm reading right now from a Bleeding Cool article. This one is written by Rich Johnson. And this is what he says. A 25% tariff on comic books shipped from Canadian printers to American distributors such as Diamond and Lunar may not make them more expensive than American printers who often use Canadian paper anyway, but it will make comics a lot more expensive in stores. A $3.99 comic will now cost $4.99. A $4.99 comic will cost $5.99, and so on and so forth. Now, comic books are generally an inelastic good, which means that an increase in price will not lead to a commensurate drop in demand. But that inelasticity cannot last forever, and it may reach a point when it snaps. This may be that point. Price points of comics combined with rent increases are the biggest given reasons for failing comic book stores, and a 25% increase in prices for comic books may be too much for many to bear. The 10% China tax will mostly affect bigger books that are already pricier, so the resistance to change for, say, an omnibus being an extra $15 will be less. That's a good point. So, like, if an omnibus is printed in China, which I guess Rich is asserting that a lot of the bigger stuff is printed elsewhere, you might not care if a $150 omnibus becomes $165. You won't feel that as much as you would feel, say, the price of Spawn going from $2.99 to $3.99, or the price of a Hickman comic going from $5.99 to $6.99.
Yeah. What is that?
It's a
That's
scaling
like,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. $15 compared to 15 to 150 is, 10%.
Which that scaling issue too also affects the types of people who can buy comics, because
Right.
that tariff and the resulting increase in the price of goods will disproportionately affect people with lower incomes, which then makes comics even more, exclusionary in who can actually buy them and who has the money to buy them.
Yeah. I feel like it's going to be interesting to see at what point this begins to change. Because sometimes these things take time to go into effect. So I wonder if this is a direct, immediate 2025 problem. Is this like a summer problem? In which case, maybe they, try to layer in the increase with like an event book. Like how can you be tactical in passing the costs back down to the consumer? Because ultimately, you will have to. uh, and so it's how do we uh, how do we make it so that it doesn't feel like this becomes terribly the new norm as much as it is, oh, this is off the back of a summer event, oh, the event book, yeah, it costs 7.99, whatever it might be, which might be shitty, but I think you want to prevent a shock to the system, to people who are already buying these things.
Well, I think Trump has mentioned the tax on Canada and Mexico specifically being one of the first things he does
Oh,
come January. Uh, so I think this will be pretty immediate in terms of how quickly Washington can work. It's never really fully immediate,
right.
but I think that we're gonna get a shock no matter what. And here the thing is that big two DC and Marvel will just increase by $1. They can afford to do that um, without really girdering the consumer to get ready for it. They'll just increase it. That'll just be the way. This will ruin anything besides the big two. Energon might be able to keep going after this, but those creator-owned books are going to get fucked because of this.
The Kickstarter
Go,
books,
yeah, good
Kickstarter
job
books.
trying to kickstart something.
Yeah, we already have people in our community who do so. Consistently, it becomes an issue. Um, and oh my God, I'm forgetting their name. Sylve consistently puts out books, and this was one of the issues that they were talking about was, they already have four different printers that they have to work with because things become so unruly or difficult. Costs change here, costs fluctuate there, and so the idea of having to get something from even one, let alone four, means that you have to increase your price quadruple.
So we're gonna get to the digital aspect of this in a second, but someone said that they thought that the majority of comics were made in China, but that's not true. So, quoting from the article, most American comic books are printed in Canada and driven across the border, with a significant amount of graphic novels published in East Asia and shipped in on the boats.
That makes sense.
This is why weekly comics get so fucked over by weather.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And if you think about the distances in between, right? You want to get those things quickly. Weekly comics have to come out at a much higher rate than a graphic novel. Graphic novel comes out every 6 issues, so every 6 months, let's say, on the seventh month, because they have to collect it and send it out and all that kind of thing. So they work in a different cycle, which means you can leverage outside printers that are more efficient, or rather cost effective, to be able to import that in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that, like, if this happens, which, look, politicians always promise stuff that they don't deliver on. There was a wall I heard about a few years ago. I don't know where it is.
The
I don't know if it
Latvian Wall.
exists. I don't know if that ever finished. Politicians talk. But I think it sucks a lot that our industry is subject to this and that it could be extremely damaging. Chad is talking a lot about the digital aspect of this. So digital comics are not basically any cheaper than physical. It's basically the same price. There's probably, you can probably in some cases get some cents off or whatever, but by and large they're within the same dollar amount.
You're saying for the consumer.
Sorry?
Cheaper for they're about the same price for the consumer, not for production.
Digital?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're not gonna spend less on digital comics than you do on physical books right now. In the world where the tariffs increase the price of printing physically, the comics industry now has to deal with the same fucking serpent that has been on its back yet again, but this time it's a little bit more, it's got a little bit more bite because if you increase the price of comic books due to the increased price of paper and the tariffs and everything else, if digital also increases, what are you increasing the price of digital comics?
Right.
It would be for the reason of protecting the LCS that has consistently lobbied against a price differential between physical and digital because they feel it would be the death of the LCS. Even though we know that readership of digital comics has never increased above about 10% in the history of the industry, which digital comics haven't been around for that long, but the point stands. Is there a possibility that we live in a world in which digital comics are $1 or more cheaper than their physical counterparts?
I think this could be it. I think A, because of what you just said, like how you're artificially upping the price for no real reason other than to keep it in line with physical, but also like the tariffs alone, or the potential of the cost of comics partnered with the cost of everyday goods going up outside of comics and rent could be the death of comic book shops.
Yeah.
And if that's enough of a venomous bite that the big two see it, I think it's enough for them to be like, all right, we're not going to match that because the writing's on the wall already.
I I don't think this is the thing that will make them change their minds about that stance. I don't think that they believe that I don't think that they believe that if they increased or they made that price disparity, that people would suddenly flock to digital. I don't think that that's realistic necessarily, but I do think for the sake of continuity between both mediums, they're going to try to maintain that unless somebody says something, unless somebody makes a big stink. The consumer has to complain, otherwise they will just upcharge because they can't. They own that. They have that right, and we as the consumer, y'all as the readers, would have to say something. It's about making more money for them, and that will help make them more money, even marginally, across the 10% of digital readers. And presumably, if you have if you have a Comixology subscription, you're getting a slight discount.
Sean does.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Sean, you would know. You get a very slight discount, 15 to 20% per weekly book, anyway. But um, that's the way that I consume my comics. I think it's a similar mentality. I'm gonna buy these things regardless, and uh, until I get priced out, and this won't price me out quite yet, but I will drop other titles that I spoke about in the Discord most recently. Welcome to Mayward Manor, Mayward Hotel. I'm forgetting the name right there, but um, that's a book that I am able to try out because I can. But if the price gets increased, those are the books that get cut. The ones that are ancillary to our reading, the ones that are ancillary to the big two. It's a Dark Horse book, so it's still a bigger publisher, but still it's going to suffer because they're losing me as a reader, and I can imagine that somebody else as a reader, both across digital and physical, will as well drop it.
I don't think that they will be able to separate the price of physical and digital in a meaningful way without backlash. And I think that that backlash would be unilateral on the part of the LCS ownership and readership in comics. Because the 10 what that 10% digital represents to me is a level of resistance that you don't see pretty much anywhere else. Like, why are comic book readers so resistant to something that is clearly easier to do, doesn't necessitate a weekly trip to a store, and doesn't cause any storage issues for you in your home? There's something so fundamental about physically reading comics that 90% of the people that pay to read comics are reading them physically. So The only thing that happens if you increase the price is that people just get angry. And either they stop buying comics altogether, or they just start complaining and being upset and causing hostility within the industry. I don't think that there's a way for comics to handle this in an elegant fashion. Because one thing is for sure, there will be no way in which Marvel and DC will endure that 25%. We
Ever.
will endure it.
Yeah, it's going off to the consumer in every situation. That's just
Always.
not how capitalism works.
Always.
But like at one point, does the comic book stores and the LCSs become like the Black Knight from Monty Python? Like all these flesh wounds and he's got no limbs left. You're just gonna walk past that bridge at that point, because they have no real legs to stand on in terms of the holding the big two back from pricing.
Sorry. Now go, Sean, because I wasn't clear on the question.
Go ahead. You can restate it.
Well, I'm saying like if people are buying less comics because it's too expensive, they're buying less physical books. When does the idea of comic book stores become less important in the grander scheme of things, so they don't become that watcher on the wall that's holding that price off? At what level does Marvel and DC decide, okay, now it makes more sense for us to drop the price of comics down? Now it makes more sense for us to make Netflix comics. There's got to be a line there somewhere.
The problem is that the local comic book shop, the direct market, is the way that the industry functions. And if you remove the element of the direct market, then look, it's not something that I liked saying, but there will be a dramatic crash. And I don't think there's a way around that. You can't just take the infrastructure of something out and think that it's going to continue to function. 90% to 10%. Yeah, sure. Some of that 90 will go digital, but a lot won't. They'll just stop. A lot of comic book readers are older individuals who have lives outside of this, who have things to do. Look, we could all use some more time and we could all use some more money. So it's not going to be that hard to stop reading if the way you prefer to read is no longer available to you. I mean, I look at it as simply as this. The film industry has had trouble getting people to come to the movies. For whatever reason, take your pick. It doesn't matter. The fact is, they can't get people to go. People want to stay home and watch whatever they got on streaming services. Comic book fans will not do that. They refuse to change. So that means to me that the industry would have to die and come back in some other fashion with new fans to get around the LCS. I'm not saying there won't be comics, by the way. I want to make that clear. I'm saying the industry of the direct market. That's all I'm referring to.
It would need to adapt at that point because it has to service a different kind of person at that then.
Yeah. It's not at that point it's not about us anymore. Or at least I shouldn't say us. I'm the physical reader here. It's not about me anymore. I go away.
Well, your access goes away, right? Your access to a store, it becomes difficult for you to pick up a book. And hey, you still got that subscription, so
I will cancel it.
sure.
That'll be when I cancel it, when I'm done with comics.
No more physicals. You know what? Even though I can, I won't. Click. Oops, 12 more months.
So I put up a poll. Would you change your buying habits if there was a price increase in comics? I really want votes on this because I'm so curious as to what you guys think. So yes, I would buy less. Yes, I would read more digitally. Yes, I would pirate comics. No, nothing would change for me. That pirating bit, it's like a dirty word in comics. Nobody really wants to acknowledge it and the degree to which it affects things. But there are a lot of people who ride the high seas because they can't afford to pay these doggone prices. I mean, it's just too damn high.
Well, and music had a way of combating that with streaming services. There is no, you have to make the ease of access in comics commiserate with um, piracy in a way. Um, I don't think they can do a Netflix of comics. They can't really do a streaming service. I mean, they could, but not with the LCS there.
Yeah, I just don't think that I don't think that solution fits the comic space because the audience is different. Nobody cares as no, or yeah, I guess at that time at least, nobody cared about how they got their music. They only cared that they got it. There wasn't the same level of pilgrimage associated with comics. Yes, people love going to the music store buying a CD, but the reality is that if you were a Britney Spears fan, it wasn't necessarily about getting her whole album. It was about getting Slave for You, and it was about getting, it was about getting her biggest songs. And at that time, that was the only way you could even get an individual single. You couldn't get a single. You had to buy the whole album.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I see people in the chat that where was that? I just had it. Uncanny Suit. I don't know if the amount of people pirating content could really go much higher. The ease of access is already there for people who would already likely to do that already. And then Marley says in the I'm in X-Men groups, people pirate more than you think, unfortunately, and I've only seen more people asking. I think as the prices of comics increase, one of the things that digital suffers with is the full representation of digital. I think also isn't quite there because those potential buyers are likely reading pirated. They are already digitally savvy. So I don't know, and I don't have the percentages. I don't know the numbers, but I wonder how many people who would otherwise be forced to purchase books digitally would affect that 10 percentage, that 10 point percentage.
You're completely right. You're completely right. And that's a number that will never be quantifiable, but I'm sure that it accounts for, like, in my opinion, this is a conservative number. It accounts for hundreds of thousands of people, if not more than that.
For sure, 100%. Damn, yo, not Pirate Bay. Somebody does like used to give like hits on like how many people would like seed and stuff. I think that was Pirate Bay actually. Not that I know.
You can see, I'm thinking of a certain website, and I think you can see the amount of people. Let me see. Yeah, you can see the amount of people who viewed that
Okay.
on this pirate site. Yeah. I'm looking at a random comic right now. Should I say? I'll say the name of the comic. Why not? It's called Modern Masters. All right. It's from publisher Tomorrow's. It's written by Eric Nolan Wethington. It's art by Alan Davis. It's got 49,000 views on
Damn.
here.
Is there a cover price on that?
I mean, it's an individual issue series from 2003, so I don't
Oh,
know, but that's 49,000 people, theoretically speaking, who could have purchased this that didn't. You think Alan Davis wouldn't have preferred that people bought that shit? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a huge number. It's a bad situation. And I'm not sure what can be done about that aspect of it, but I can tell you what won't help: the increased price of comics. It's too easy to pirate for people to keep shelling out more money. Not everybody gives a fuck. Like, we all assume people care about the creators and care about their pockets. People don't give a shit.
yeah.
We do in our bubble,
Yeah.
but that means nothing comparatively.
Uh, I pulled up one such site just to put numbers to this, like costs for Hornsby and Halo number one. On this site, 2.8 k views. At the cover price, I have 3.99. I think that's right. That's 12K. That could be for one title. That could be in the industry. That could be helping Ghost Machine, Image Comics, Tomasi, Schneis,
Peter
Schneisberg,
Schneeberg, yeah.
Schneidberg. All these people. And again, not to denigrate necessarily. If that is your financial situation, then that is your financial situation, and I'm glad that you're reading comics. but that is a reality to that as well.
Yeah, quite frankly, and I know it's not necessarily cool to say this, but I I don't like pirating. It's not my bag. It's not the way I like to do things. I like to, you know, purchase this stuff and support and whatever. But if somebody can't afford to do that, it is what it is, and like nothing can stop them. Yes, it's illegal, but what are we doing about it? We're not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna end this poll. I want to see the result here. It seems like it's a pretty clear cut answer. Would you change your buying habits if there was a price increase in comics? 55% said yes, I would buy less comics. 17% said yes, I would pirate comics. 14% said no, nothing would change for me, and 11% said yes, I would read more digitally.
Hey, man. Yeah.
So, in our small anecdotal sample size, the majority of people would buy less comics, and out of that, some of them would go on to pirate.
Red Norval jumps into the chat. I don't know if I've heard that name before. Comics are too expensive nowadays. That is why a year ago, I stopped buying single issues and only buy collected editions. That's the other thing. You move away from the the floppies. You move away from the more broken down distributed cost basis to something that is collected because it's more cost efficient, and that's fair. Uh, Thank you for continuing to buy comics and not having it scare you away enough. But then, if again with these tariffs, that means that even that will come to increase the collected editions marginally. But hopefully, that doesn't mean enough to affect your readership.
Well, if the tariffs are real and true, then the price of a graphic novel is going to increase. And at what point does that become untenable?
Right. Um,
To me, they're already way too expensive.
Yeah, a trade like a hardcover for the first arc. It's what, 5 issues? You're spending like $30 on it or something.
That should not be the case. That's crazy. And you're right, that is the case, but it shouldn't be. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so long. Image cheap volume ones.
Right. Yeah. Which is one of the best ways that they sell their books.
And who knows if the compact comics will continue to be able to be a thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Gage asked, is that based on my previous comment, is that a per visit or per computer? It says per view, so who knows what that means? It could be multiple views, could be multiple returns. It's just a rough estimation, more so to illustrate that there's money on the table because of pirating.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pete Collins of the Bardic Verses says it's a conundrum. Prices go up, pirating goes up. Publishers make less money, then greenlight less books. Less to pirate, less to buy.
Yeah.
I think what we got to do here is we got to allow, we got to talk to Baron, little guy Baron Trump. We got to let him know, like, hey, what's your favorite comic right now? Like, what are you reading? Are you reading stuff? It's probably not Captain America. We need to appeal to his father. That's what we need.
I think you're looking in the wrong place for the answer, Tyler.
Oh,
I think
we
the
gotta
I think
talk
the
to
hero we
Elon.
need is actually one of the greatest basketball players of all time. I think LeBron James is the hero we need. Not the one we deserve, but he's the one we need. He's got millions of dollars. He just recently started reading comics. We saw that boy had a copy of Batman and Son in his hand. Now, if that man decides he loves comics, he could infuse some of that big money he makes into the industry.
And we've seen how tall Baron Trump is. That boy needs to be out of a suit into some basketball trunks because that dude's like almost 7 foot tall. Get him on a court. Jeez.
I'd rather not. Yeah. Gavin says I was gonna go there. Yeah, we need LeBron. He needs to put on his Superman outfit and save us all. Okay, so we set a goal a little bit earlier. What was the goal? It was 80 likes. We've hit 84.
Ooh.
So we cleared it. Thank you guys. We are going to spin the wheel in just a moment. We're going to spin the wheel of games, and we're gonna end this show with a bang, hopefully. I have to see what games I have prepared. I totally forgot that I might need to re-up some games, but we'll make it work. We'll
Figure
make
it
it
out. We'll
work.
figure it out. Yeah, I looked at these and I forgot. So yeah.
Yeah, I've always got something in the tuck. But before we get to that, I do want to celebrate the rest of our patrons who are so generous and amazing enough to support us the way that you guys do. So it wouldn't be an episode of the Comics Pals without shouting all you people out. Thank you so much. To Paul Powerhouse Smith, Andrew the Galaxian Smith, Neon Knight, the Cosmic Avenger, Matthew the Shade Cosmo, BJ Kicks, the Living Blade, Boss Rendier, the Grand Alchemist, Chop Harder Alchemist, John Barrier B, Simon Galeforce, Todd Tremor Butler, Cameron Cavernous Gordon, Doomsday David Melendez Doria, Cameron Torn Thornton, Steve Swarm Canaris, Brian Rage Redmond, Panda V Panda, Ted, and we've got a couple more. We also have to say thank you to Mad Max, the absolute overthinker. Here we go. Madness. It generally refers to someone acting so far outside of societal norms as to be considered mentally ill or deranged. Max wouldn't argue with that definition, though he would ask the definer to consider this. How would you behave if, ever since you were a child, you thought not only your own thoughts, but the thoughts of people around you? What if you knew exactly what someone thinks about you, the warts on their soul? What if you could draw to the front of their consciousness their deepest secrets? How could you not be driven mad, become obsessed with peering into people's minds and observing its functionality? More sinisterly, how could you avoid giving into your sadistic tendencies and using your intimate knowledge of an enemy's worst fears and flaws to drive them mad too? Max's incredible mental capabilities made him as rich as he cared to be, as it was remarkably easy to swindle people out of their money when you knew exactly what was going on in their mind. All this success grew boring for a mind such as Max's, and he found that he needed more. His hunger for knowledge extended beyond humanity. He wanted to know the secrets of beings outside the confines of our world. He spent over 2 days in a deep state of concentration, during which he allowed himself no outside stimulus, including food or drink. Max was attempting to push his psychic powers further than any man had ever laid eyes or foot in our universe, a feat he was sure that no other human in history was capable of. He may have been a madman, but his will, his obsession was unmatched, and he would not be denied. Near a total collapse from exhaustion, Max thought he may be hallucinating when he heard an unfamiliar thought voice enter his mind. I see you, casting yourself from across space. Yours is a powerful mind to reach me here. What are you? Max was taken aback. The voice felt powerful. It hurt his mind to hear it. I am human. You may call me Max. Tell me what you are. Tell me everything about you. I am the one who speaks for all. We are hungry. Your mind's power is like a beacon pointing to your world. We will seek your people out, human. We will feed. A smile pried its way across Max's lips. The secrets of the universe were within his reach, and he knew exactly what he needed to say to get them. You mistake me for someone who cares for his people. I'm not the only one of my kind with incredible powers, though. You will experience formidable resistance. However, in exchange for all of your knowledge of the universe, its secrets, and guaranteed safe passage beyond Earth, I will prepare this world for your arrival, soften it, divide it, and provide you with the blueprint for victory against my fellow man. Do we have a deal? Do not think to lie to me. None have succeeded before. Max heard a terrible noise in his mind, like static. He had no idea what it was, but one day he would know everything about the creature. We agree to your terms, human. We have only one question. Why betray your people this way? I am my people. My allegiance lies with myself. Knowledge above all. Welcome, Mad Max. You've sold your people down a river,
Yo.
and that's pretty messed up. But still, you are welcome to join the Palsverse. Thank you so much. It sounds like our heroes have a lot to endure.
Aliens, bro.
See,
I like how we've been expanding the cosmic end of this to some degree.
CW Gordon says Palsverse is going to do Invasion.
Well, it depends. I mean, is Max really going to help, or what's he going to do? We'll have to wait to find out. But I had a lot of fun writing that, Max. Thank you so much for supporting us. I really appreciate you. Thank you for your patience as well. And again, welcome to the Palsverse.
Gavin says Max sounds like someone who pirates comics.
Damn.
Hey, absolute overthinker in the chat says love it. Let's go,
Awesome.
dude.
Thank you. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that, Max. Appreciate you. Okay, let's end the show with a game. Let's have a good time. Let's play a game, and yeah, let's see what we hit on. So Tyler's gonna spin the wheel, and whatever it lands on, hopefully we can play.
I should use Pals Bucks to get an actual wheel.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Hey.
I am with that.
Plenty
Hey.
of cam girls have it.
It's in the budget.
What I know. All right, what do we got here? Is it gonna be a draft? It's gonna be a draft.
A draft?
A draft. Marco,
Right.
when he gets drafted and hits an IED.
Okay, cool. So we landed on the draft. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the three of us are going to essentially draft characters based around a prompt that I will give out here in a moment. And you guys decide through the power of your voting who made the best draft, who drafted the best team. So I think what we'll try, I think it's a little thematic for this episode. We'll do the no legacy draft. Now, what this means, what I mean by this is characters whose identity is not tied to another character in any way, nor are they a character who is seen as a legacy character. So, for example, what I mean by that is you can't choose Batman because Batman is the mantle, but you also can't choose Nightwing because there is no Nightwing without Batman.
Man, my gut was like, oh, Daredevil. Fuck, Elektra, you fucked up.
Well, no, Elektra
Is Daredevil?
is her own thing, and Daredevil. Oh, I see what you mean.
She's Daredevil right now. It's a more
Right,
recent ruiner for me. So
right. But okay, so for the sake of this, like Elektra's Elektra,
Elektra's doable. Daredevil's not.
right?
Yeah.
How many we doing?
I think we can do 5. That should be tenable.
Okay.
I just need to snag my dice. Here we go.
Roll
There
them
we go.
bones, Sean.
All right, I've got my dice, and I am now going to roll. I'm going to roll for Tyler up first. So here we go.
Tyler.
That is a 7. Lucky number 7. I'll roll for myself now. That is a 6.
Ooh.
And for Marco,
5?
that is an 8.
Ooh.
So it's going to be Marco, Tyler, myself in that order. And as I said, this will be a snake draft.
Okay.
Villains
so
allowed?
Sorry?
Are villains allowed?
I think that even opens it up too much. I think let's
so,
stick to heroes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Heroes. In that case, I'm gonna same start. I'm gonna do ambush bug.
Typical
All right.
Marco start.
You drafted Ambush Bug in your last draft, by the way.
In
Plus
case
the
of
flies.
emergency.
Yeah, hit the glass.
All right, I'm gonna go with. Shit. I was gonna be like Thor. No, can't. Doesn't work.
Why?
Because of Mighty Thor,
Mighty Thor.
Jane Foster.
I can't even say Valkyrie either because that's also legacy.
Is she?
There's more than one Valkyrie.
Oh, right. Yep.
All right, give me Norin Rad, the Silver Surfer.
Nice. Okay. I am going to go with Jean Grey. And I will also draft I will also draft Martian Manhunter. By the way, there may be some of these that, any of us will get wrong. So,
Would
like if I say something that's incorrect, then
Can I argue Miss Martian is the legacy of Martian Manhunter
I don't even know who Miss Martian is.
from Young Justice? She's in the TV show too.
I'm not arguing with you. I don't know who it is. I don't know. I don't know her origin. I have no clue.
Okay,
Is she a
she's a
is
Martian
she
from
just a
Earth.
Martian or is she a spin-off of Martian Manhunter?
She's a spinoff, even thematically in her costume.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then I will draft somebody else. Then I will go with Cyclops. Luna says, "Isn't there multiple Silver Surfers?"
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Is there?
Yeah.
Does alternate realities count? Like alternate universe?
Well, it's a
There's
man.
different
Different people have taken.
heralds.
They're different heralds.
Herald doesn't count though. That's a title.
No, that wouldn't count in my
Yeah.
mind.
Herald of the
There's like an
Black.
alternate universe Silver Surfer, but I don't think that counts because then Marvel characters are off the limit, off the board. Then
Brian Adkins says Miss Martian is a white Martian. Martian Manhunter is a green Martian. But if
Okay.
she's inspired by him, then that would still count. In any event, I chose mine. Tyler, you're up next.
oh man, okay. Um, let me go with. Oh man, I just reorganized my Marvel Legends last night, so this should be easier than it is. Uh, Jeez, let me get Wonder Man.
Okay.
Let me do Aquaman.
Aqualad?
I feel like
Hmm. Aqualad. Nah.
If you have a Teen Titans equivalent, that's Legacy.
But it's a sidekick.
yeah,
So-
but we wouldn't allow a Robin
Yeah.
because they wouldn't exist without Batman.
Damn.
So I'm gonna yeah. Unfortunately, I'm gonna agree with no Aqualad.
All right. I'm gonna say in that case, Adam Strange.
Okay, nice. This is hard.
Messed up my alliteration here. I was going for A's.
Start going for L's.
I'm gonna go with in that case. I can't do that one either. Damn, I was here sitting thinking on this one anyway. Surely an X-Men. Surely an X-Men.
That's what I thought too, and it gets a little tricky.
There are
Yeah.
57,000 X-Men. Pick one.
Beak.
There you go.
Give me. So I went to look at my bookshelf for inspiration, and the first book I see is Young Avengers, and I'm like, "Fuck you."
Right?
Yeah, it's like McKelvey's and Gillen's Young Avengers. Let me get Mr. Miracle.
Nice. Nice. I will choose the Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch, and I will also go with Vision.
You trying to have some fucking on your team, Jesus.
Yes.
All right, give me. Oh, I just had one. I lost it. God damn it! I was too busy trying to make a joke. I see some in the chat, but I'm not going to listen to you guys. Sorry. Let me get Booster Gold.
Valid.
Cyborg
Hell yeah.
and ooh, no, Zatanna doesn't count. Damn, because of her dad,
Well, oh.
Zatara.
Zatara.
I mean,
Right.
I think he exists in the context of Zatanna, but still,
But
it is
I would
literally.
count it.
Yeah.
I'd call shit on that. Mm, then in that case, give me Tim Hunter.
Who the fuck is Tim Hunter?
Books of Magic. It's DC's Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. His wand is a pencil.
All right. So Marco is set.
Let me get Doctor Strange.
Clea. Brother Voodoo.
Okay, was she Doctor Strange or was she the Sorcerer Supreme?
Her book was called Strange.
Yeah. She.
Did she call?
She's Clea Strange. So Doctor Strange.
Fuck. All right. I could debate that, but I'm not gonna. Reed Richards.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
That's one I wish I had. All right. And then for my final pick, I will go with I'll go with well, this may be controversial. Let's see what you guys say. I want to go with Apocalypse.
It's a villain.
Not a hero.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, he was just a hero right now.
Man, if
No,
I said
I-
Magneto, you'd dispute that.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought
Okay.
Apocalypse too, but bad guy.
Fair enough. So then in that case, I will choose. Well, does this character count? Firestorm? I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
If it is, it's a either one of those like how Blue Beetle's a legacy character. It's something
Right.
I don't have enough. I'm pretty sure that's an original character. I think you're safe there.
But which one?
Oh,
then,
there's
right?
2 versions, but don't they get combined?
They do get combined, but they get combined every time.
Is this the one gray area one?
Is there the question is there I know there's 2 people in Firestorm. Outside
Right.
of those 2, is there another Firestorm?
Well, they've been firestorms outside of each other. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But to me, they are both Firestorm. Like
Ronnie Redmond and what's the other firestorm?
Steen.
No, that's the professor from the TV show. Like that was the original too. It was Professor Steen and Ronnie Redmond. There was another firestorm after that, the black one.
okay, so then
Yeah.
Then we'll
and
leave it
then
there.
Ronnie, and then the I can't believe I just said the black one. But
Jason.
Jason, yes. They then were formed together to be another. So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think firestorm counts.
I will choose Black Bolt. It's fine.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay, so we're gonna get the poll up right now. The poll is up
do I get one
in
more?
terms of who do you think won. So Marco got Ambush Bug, Adam Strange, Beak, Cyborg, and Tim Hunt. Tyler got Silver Surfer, Wonder Man, Mr. Miracle, Booster Gold, and Reed Richards. And I drafted Jean Grey, Cyclops, Scarlet Witch, Vision, and Black Bolt. One of those things is not like the other. But be that as it may, who do you feel like won the draft? Cast your vote. The poll is up now. We'll keep that up for a little bit as we just hang out and rap with you guys.
So I was debating Howard the Duck, but is that a legacy of Donald Duck?
No.
It's a parody.
I guess parody
Yeah,
doesn't count. Yeah.
Parody. I was gonna say for Vision though, is Vision not like previously what's his face?
It's brainwaves. It doesn't matter.
No,
It's a new
Okay,
character.
okay.
Yeah.
I would not. Yeah, I would not consider that. You know.
Hank Pym and Ultron are not Vision until Vision
Right.
comes around, and then Vision might be Ultron and Hank Pym, but like I was thinking, like, can I say Yellow Jacket? It's Hank Pym's character, but when he was in Yellow Jacket, like there are some weird ones there
Right.
that I was curious about. But
There are some tricky ones. There are definitely some tricky ones.
man, my dumbass
CW
was-
Gordon says, "Isn't Vision's daughter a Vision?" I mean, she's a daughter. She's a robot child.
That's last name though, which I guess I
Viz.
could have argued if Clea Strange counted, Vision could have counted, but that's so pedantic. I wouldn't argue that.
Yeah.
I would. What am I gonna say? Like Cyclops doesn't count because young Cyclops was from an alternate reality and he was in the Champions. Like
Hawk and Dove, that would have been valid, I
That would've-
think.
Yeah. Hey,
yeah,
Mr.
there's
DC.
multiple Hawks and Doves. Hawk and Dove were originally 2 guys.
Oh. Spiral Storm says his team is Emma Frost, Invisible Woman, Scarlet Witch, Tigra, and Crimson Fox. Well, let me tell you something. Spiral Storm's team is not in the poll, but Spiral Storm wins to me.
That's a Frank Cho cover waiting to happen.
And a Frank Cho cover that I would like to see, very much so.
Pete Collin has Orion, Hercules, Magic, Silver Surfer, and Storm.
I like that.
Orion, Yeah.
Magic's a good call.
Hercules.
I was
Yeah,
like, I was an
Hercules.
idiot. I was gonna be like, oh, Wolverine, duh. God damn it.
Right. Yeah, just not choosable. It gets murky. Chad is resisting the Vision pick.
I see it.
Chad is against the Vision pick. I mean, if you want me to fucking pick a new character, I'll pick a new character.
Do it. Do
Uh,
it. Just do it. Just do it off. Do it off the
You
top of
gotta
your head.
listen to the viewers, dude. Come on, we're a man. You're a man of the people here.
fucking. Let's see.
Fucking.
So if you got rid of
Oh,
Vision, then you need somebody else the Scarlet Witch can sleep with.
Storm. How about that?
You should have said
yo.
Quicksilver.
That could happen.
Storm, yeah, Storm's fair.
That could happen. I mean, I had to draft. I drafted 3 X-Men, and if you count
X-Men's
Storm
kind of the
or
way to
Scarlet
go.
Witch, that's 4 X-Men.
Yeah.
But we do what we have to do. CW Gordon says, "Nah, it's fine. Vision sucks anyway. He wasn't helping you win." God damn.
Maystorm.
Ultimate doesn't count. Yeah.
Don't even play those games, Marco.
That's not fair.
Maystorm. Hell no. Izzy goes with Silver Sable, Shadow Lass, Safe Space, Snowflake, and Squirrel Girl.
Who the fuck is Shadow Lass? Is this a Legion
I don't
character?
know.
Anytime I hear Lass, I'm like, oh, Legion.
There are comic Vision fans. Yeah, I love the Vision in CW Gordon. I've been a fan of the Vision since the Captain America and the Avengers video game. I was obsessed. Like, who is this white dude?
Yo, Izzy, shout out because you got all of them with starting with S's. So that is really scratching an alliteration itch for me.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Would
I
you
like that.
consider Cloak and Dagger one character?
Nope.
Well, you're unlike Marvel Rivals then.
I'm unlike most games they're in. I feel like.
They just announced
They're-
like 5 new characters while we were live.
Are they a part of it?
Cloak and Dagger is one character, yeah.
So who else?
Iron Fist, Wolverine,
Oh,
Black Widow, and Squirrel Girl.
She gonna throw nuts?
She has a slingshot, yeah. Yeah.
What a ridiculous game!
I hope she's. It looks like it's like explosive nuts. It looks like it's maybe Junkrat from Overwatch. That's what I'm hoping because there's no equivalent. But
wait. Explain this game to me. What is the?
it's
what are the
Overwatch
mechanisms here?
except third person and a lot more melee in it because it's superheroes.
I haven't played Overwatch.
Overwatch is okay. I couldn't really get into it like that. Joseph Wolf says no Ghost Rider. If you mean for Marvel Rivals, that would be sick.
It's top on the fan poll right now. But no, Ghost Rider wouldn't count for the draft though because there are multiples.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Luna says Starfire, Raven, Galaxy, Primer, and Ghostmaker. Raven is a good one.
Starfire's a good one too.
Yeah.
Ghostmaker, I like Ghostmaker. I'm a Ghostmaker fan.
Ghostmaker's okay. Ghostmaker's okay. It's just one of those things where it's like I haven't spent enough time with that character.
Hmm.
He's one of those characters where like the design just fucking kicks ass.
Yeah, he looks sick. I mean, Tynan introduced so many characters during that run, and other than Punchline, who do you really see? And you hardly see her.
Ghostmaker showed up a couple times. He's in DC Vampires right now, which is not mainline continuity. But there was also that Batman Inc. book that trailed off after Tinian's run that Ghostmaker was a part of. But like, who was the other one? Something Mary, the cybernetic woman.
Yeah. Can't remember
She
her
dropped
name,
off.
but yeah.
She got one of those Archer variants, and that's it.
Okay, well, where's the fucking gardener? Remember the gardener?
Yeah, there's another one. I mean, I give Tiny credit. Nobody ever wants to make new characters anymore. So he made a lot.
Yeah, for me it was too much at once. I read that run recently, as some of you might know, and it was just a lot. Like I liked Punchline, Ghostmaker was cool, the Clown Hunter kid was all right too, but it was just like a lot of characters. Like I didn't care about Abyss at all, the villain. Like that was whatever.
Abyss, yeah, he didn't do much for me either. He looked like create a character number 3.
Exactly. All right, I'm gonna end the poll. So it appears that I win. Sean at 50%, Marco at 31%, and Tyler at 18%.
How are you going to let me lose against Ambush Bug and Beak?
That's rough.
That is.
My man picked 2 of the worst characters.
You guys must hate Wonder Man. Jeez, that is unfair. I'm calling bullshit on this draft.
So
I don't care
close.
that Sean won. It's fine. He had some good picks. But losing to Marco, big two Marco over here.
And
Big two.
and if on paper, I mean, Tyler's team is pretty good. Like,
Goes toe to toe with your team.
yeah. Marco just said, fuck it. He drafted Tim Hunt. I don't even know who that is.
It's a child with a pencil.
He has his little magic book. He got a little quill. Come on, Tim Hunter?
It doesn't even have a quill. It's a pencil. Isn't it the whole bit? That's his wand. You can make anything a wand, sort of.
Yeah, you can't make anything you want, yeah.
Wand and a rabbit.
Spiral says Sean used Gene. That's why he wins. Well, you know what? I like to think that you're right, because I like to think that there are many, many Jean Grey fans in the world. And there are. Luna says Marco was more unique.
Oh, like that. I like that.
See, but that's what makes the draft fun, is you guys have your own criteria.
You're going to get the most wild-ass draft from me next time. Just watch.
See, if you had drafted Howard the Duck like you thought to,
Honestly,
maybe you would have.
He was my next one. I just forgot how to count.
Oh.
Thought you got 6.
Okay. C.W. Gordon says Black Bolt did it for me. I miss him. Me too.
Haven't heard from him much lately.
Haha.
And you don't want to. You do not want to. Hey, listen, the next time we're going to be hanging out with you guys live is this Tuesday at 8:30. Jason Fabach is joining us. If you don't know his name, type it in to the Google machine. You're going to be blown away. This man is a brilliant artist. Ghost Machine, Rook Exodus is stellar. We talked about the Dark Side War that Jay was one of the artists of. Mind-blowing stuff. 3 Jokers, incredible art. We're going to sit it down and chop it up with Jay about everything he's done, pretty much. So come hang out for that. And then next Saturday, we're going to be here with Al Ewing.
Heyo, that's a good one.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Especially now that he has a DC work to talk about. And his Venom will just come out, too. All new Venom. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're going to be reading that on Palsverse. So make sure you guys tune in for Palsverse to hear our thoughts on that. And tune in to the Monday show, which I'm affectionately referring to in my mind as Pals Previews. That's where we talk about the books that we're excited for throughout the week. Books that we don't get to talk about on this show or Palsverse. We tell you what's going to be on Palsverse, all that good stuff. I know it's got to grow its audience. Thank you to everybody who's been watching. I want to see more of you jumping on board. And if you're not watching and you've seen it on your feed, why not? I won't be offended. I genuinely want to know, what can we do to make it more interesting to you? Is there something that would make it more of a compelling watch? I want to see that show doing the kinds of numbers that everything else we do does. We're putting a lot into it, and I think it's quality. So give it a look if you haven't.
It's the show that requires the most editing.
That too.
So help me out, guys. Come on.
Make it.
Brian Adkins says, isn't Rachel Summers also Phoenix? I didn't draft Phoenix. I drafted Jean Grey.
Jean Grey. Only one.
Telekinesis.
Yep.
Yeah. The one.
If it makes you feel better, we don't even have to use the Jean Grey from after the Phoenix was ever a factor. We could just stick to, regular old Marvel Girl. I'm good with that. All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. You made November spectacular. You guys have been so great. I can't wait to see you all in December. We're going to have a great, great, great time together. We've got a lot more coming down the pike. So thank you so much for being with us.